Almost 3 years ago, the planet Earth went through a major shakeup, and the animals and plants living there started evolving in wild ways. To keep things from going off the rails and to keep the peace, humans discovered they could control monsters. These awakened individuals become known as monster trainers. Or at least that's what this fatty woman told us. She wraps up the lesson by reminding everyone that everything they have learned today will be on the test. Right at that moment, the school bell rings, signaling the end of the class. Before everyone heads out, she also gives a shout-out about the monster taming exam tomorrow and suggests that anyone interested should come check it out with their parents. As the students head out and the city streets get busy, we meet Gao Peng, an 18-year-old from Chang'an 3rd High School. He's got dreams of becoming a monster trainer, but lately he's been stuck dealing with these super annoying system prompts that keep bugging him. He doesn't bother paying much attention to what the system prompt is saying and figures it might just be a hallucination from all the recent stress. As he heads up the staircase, he spots a spider chilling on the steps, and sure enough, the system window pops up again, showing the stats of this monster. When he sees this notification, he's convinced these prompts are definitely real. He then remembers that this spider is apparently a striped gray disc spider raised by Granny Chen, and he also recalls his chubster teacher saying it's a relatively gentle creature. But it seems that's not the case. The spider suddenly leaps at him to attack, and he quickly ducks and starts climbing the stairs while frantically calling out for Granny Chen. The spider throws a web at him, and he narrowly avoids getting tangled up. As he runs around, he looks back to find the spider has disappeared, only to have it pop up right in front of him. In that frantic situation, his eyes catch the system notification again, and he notices that this monster is weak against fire. Without wasting a second, he pulls out a lighter, sets it on fire, and throws it at the spider with all his might. The lighter hits the spider, causing a small explosion that starts burning the critter alive. But his face quickly goes pale again when he realizes the fire is way too small to do any real damage, and the monster starts hopping around like crazy. Its shimmering eyes make it obvious that it's officially pissed off. Even the system notification flashes red, warning our MC that he's about to get screwed if he does not run. So he bolts, making a frantic dash towards the top floor, hoping to reach his apartment. His monster Dazi is still in the apartments, so he's sure he'll be safe once he gets inside. After scrambling up the stairs, he finally reaches his front door. But before he could enter, that monster had already closed in. In this desperate situation, he shouts his friend's name at the top of his lungs, and another creature promptly pops out from the front door and quickly smacks the oversized spider right where it hurts. The poor spider crashes to the ground, trembling in fear as this centipede-like creature stands tall beside our boy. The little critter quickly makes a hasty exit from the scene, and our hero dramatically adjusts his glasses, giving props to this Spidey for its speed and agility. We then learn that this centipede-like monster, whom our boy calls Da Z, is directly linked to his brain through a mind link, thanks to their contract. The monster transforms back into its less evolved, non-combat form and starts screaming right into our hero's head, complaining about not being fed properly. Apparently monsters have two different forms, and in their non-combat forms, they shrink in size to conserve energy and slowly heal from light injuries. Our boy gives his friend a little pat on the head and decides to feed him right away. As soon as he gets into the apartment, he heads straight for the kitchen. With the finesse of a seasoned chef, he twirls a sharp cleaver and slices the meat into perfectly even pieces. In just minutes, the nutritious meal is ready, and the aroma wafting from the bowl is so enticing that Dazi starts drooling and begins chomping down like a hungry beast. As he looks at his hungry buddy, he tells it to eat slowly. As he says this, another system prompt pops up before his eyes. There we learn that Dazi is a purple-backed, yellow-clawed centipede monster. The stats are interesting, but what really blows our boy's mind is a little bar below the stats that shows he might be able to upgrade a normal grade monster to an excellent grade one. This discovery is so unreal that our boy hardly believes his eyes. You see, monsters are ranked from the lowest to the highest as normal grade, excellent grade, and perfect grade. These grades determine how much a monster can develop, with higher grades indicating greater potential. If he can upgrade Dazi to an excellent grade now, it means he could potentially reach a perfect grade in the future. The thought of achieving perfect grade, which is legendary and represents boss monsters, lights up a huge smile on our boy's face. He's so overjoyed that he starts hugging his little friend, but it looks like this clueless creature has no idea why its master is going wild with excitement over what seems like an ordinary moment. Our boy dives into the requirements for the excellent grade upgrade. First up is shade grass, which is easy to obtain. He can also buy thunderstruck wood without much trouble, but the lightning core crystal is a different story. A common 5-element core crystal already costs 8 credits, so a lightning core crystal, which is rarer, would set him back at least 10 credits, which is pretty pricey. He decides to think about it later. Since the New World government was established, They set up both Alliance dollars and Alliance credit points. Alliance credits are a high-class currency based on Alliance dollars, and 10,000 Alliance dollars can be exchanged for Alliance credit points. He also reflects on how, after his parents died in the accident, the country sent 20 credits as a pension, and he still has 11 credits left. It's barely enough to get the materials Da Zi needs for the upgrade. He worries that if he uses those credits, they won't be able to live normal lives anymore. Once Da Zi finishes its meal, it still seems hungry. Eventually, our boy ends up sharing his own food with the monster. As he sits there, he gets kinda dejected as he laments how tough it is to make money in this world. He's got the recipe for the upgrade, but just doesn't have the much-needed cash to buy the materials. That's when he remembers the people known as monster breeders. His face lights up with excitement as he imagines himself working as a monster breeder to earn some hard cash. Apparently, the secrets to monster evolution have always been closely guarded by breeders, but since he can see the stats of monsters through his system, he's confident he could become the best monster breeder and earn as much money as he wants. He then recalls his teacher's words from today about the monster breeder examination happening tomorrow. He quickly pulls out his phone to see if he still has time for registration or not. Well, conveniently enough, he still has 3 minutes left. Without wasting any time, he smashes that yes button, and after a brief loading period, a congratulatory message flashes on the screen, stating that his application has been accepted. It instructs him to go to the Chang'an City Monster Breeder Division tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp to participate. The next day arrives, and before heading out for the exam, Gao Peng knocks on the neighbor's apartment. When the door creaks open, out steps an absolute beauty. She looks like she hasn't slept much, with sleepless eyes that suggest she had fun last night. She asks our boy the reason behind his visit. The guy, however, quickly averts his gaze to avoid eye contact with this stunner, and greets her with a simple good morning in a low tone. She asks him why he's visiting so early, and he explains that he's heading to the monster breeder exam and needs someone to look after Da Zi for a couple of days. Not surprisingly, the girl quickly agrees, telling him not to worry about a thing and that he can go off to his exam without any concerns. He becomes pleased as he can take his test without worrying about Da Zi. He bids her, Sister Tang Tang, the lovely neighbor, a good day and offers to treat her to dinner when he returns. When Gao Peng leaves, her expressions shift. She makes an irritated look and wonders how Gao Peng even received a contract for this ordinary, ugly centipede. When Da Zi hears the lady say such derogatory things, he becomes enraged and attempts to leap on her. But she caresses his head and looks at him gently and sympathetically. She knew the old guy would be angry to learn about Da Zi. As they enter the living area, she sees the call from the elderly man on her phone. After giving Da Zi his meal, she sits down on the couch and answers the phone. She calls the elderly man as Old Jiang, anticipating that he won't become upset about what she is going to reveal. She explains that Gao Peng is a typical grade centipede with yellow claws and a purple back. Now the old man is enraged and yells over the call. He gets angry with her for not giving him guidance on the centipede since it has a low potential and is challenging to train. The beautiful lady took the phone away from her ear after hearing him yell. As she moves in the direction of the widow, she asks him how she could have accomplished it. Given that Gao Peng, his grandson, resembles him, she describes him as an old guy who is as obstinate as a mule and says that Gao Peng's daughter left the centipede for him. As she tousles her hair, she states that if it were up to her, she would eliminate the disobedient people and replace them with the obedient ones. Gazing out of the window, her voice was full of conviction, and she stated that the world is full of human talent, as if she had seen limitless potential in every person she met. Through the window, she sees Gao Peng running for his test and encourages the elderly man to do it his way and forget about Gao Peng. She assures him that Gao Peng will be safe as she will be around, and she hangs up on the call. The elderly man approaches his office's glass wall and looks outdoors, his hands crossed in the back. A female employee, who appears to be his secretary, enters and inquires as to if he has called for her. The old man remains in the same position, his face turned to the side with staring eyes. In a stern voice, he orders her to warn the experimental department that they only have 5 months to prove themselves, and that if they fail to do so, they will have no reason to continue operating. He also declares that he has no more time to spare and orders Li Hui to resolve the issues at the Qinghui branch within 7 months. He sways his hand, telling her to depart. She bows to him, seeming afraid, and tells him she will take care of these things immediately. Old Jiang, the elderly man, sees a picture of himself and his young grandson, Gao Peng. It was an image of Gao Peng's early years. He gave it a very loving and affectionate look. As he continued to gaze at it, his eyes grew softer and developed a feeling of tenderness and admiration. He promises that no one will be able to harm him and that he will find him within a year. There were gigantic buildings and a large crowd. One of the structures is the Chang'an City Monster Breed ER branch, where monster breeders assemble. Gao Peng's hand was clutching the straps of his backpack as he looked around at people. From the center of the crowd, Gao Peng hears someone call his name. He turns around to find a little lad in his school uniform. Gao Peng stared at the tiny boy, whose name was Li Xiaogong. He was there with his mother, Zhang Hong, and older sister, Li Hongdo. Gao Peng meets his mother. Later, she wonders if he came to watch the monster breeder exam. The little tad Li Xiaogong taunts her, claiming that she has failed 3 times and that they are coming to help her. Li Hongdu becomes upset and slaps her brother on the head with her purse, telling him that she believes their mother will pass the examination this time. A lump formed on his skull. He reminds her of all the times she shouldn't have hit him on the head. He believes that lowers his IQ. Among these things, Gao Peng informs them that he is there to take the monster breeder exam. The 3 of them are astonished to hear this, especially Li Xiaogong. Their mother pats Gao Peng's shoulder and encourages him by saying that young people should have a passion for monster breeding. She even mentions that the city may find their youngest breeder today. He hesitantly responds that he isn't good enough to be the youngest breeder, but he wants to try his luck. A short man with neck-length golden hair, a suit, and bodyguards overhears their chat. With a jealous and proud expression, he snaps his fingers and wonders how the city had such low requirements for monster breeders that anyone could pass the exam. He says this while pointing at Gao Peng. The little lad is furious and confronts him. His sister attempts to stop him. The short man repeats himself, claiming that young people are not fully mature enough to seek monsters. This is a joke. Gao Peng, with a serene attitude, claims that he would have been a high-class breeder if insults were the requirement. That short man was Wang Shu from Wang Corporations. He had failed 4 times consecutively, and therefore felt threatened by Gao Peng. When the building's gates opened, a tall, well-proportioned guy with long bluish-gray hair emerged holding documents and commanding them to attend the exam in order. He was Feng Shu, the main examiner. As everyone enters the building and finds their spot, Feng Shu greets them and explains that the exam will be divided into 2 parts, a written portion and a practical portion. During the writing stage, authors must precisely describe the monster that will be portrayed on screen. With this, he believes it is appropriate to begin the exam. A video clip comes on the screen, featuring a dolphin-like structure with whitish-blue symbols on its head. When the tape is shown, everyone is horrified and begins to mumble because they don't know what species it is. Feng Shu claims that this was the first clip, and they have 20 minutes to write about the monster. Everyone starts chatting, saying it's too rapid to observe anything in such a short period of time. Few gave up and said they'd do harder next year. Feng Shu is enraged and declares that anyone who continues to chat will be considered cheating and thrown out of the exam hall. Wang Shu was in the test hall taking the exam. He smiles wickedly and says he was fortunate to receive the questions beforehand and is irritated by Gao Peng. Gao Peng, on the other hand, is pleased because he can see the monster and discovers that it is the storm dolphin, who enjoys light, soothing music, sunbathing, and eating squids and shrimps. He despises being disturbed by loud noises and is terrified of daring monster attacks. While writing about this dolphin, he imagines a forest with a large monster monkey whose eyes are red and jumping from tree to tree seeking bananas. He's a powerful monkey who enjoys climbing trees and eating bananas. He becomes easily upset and irritable, and he fears a poison-related monster attack. He notices a mantis again in the jungle, this time among the huge trees. It is a keen mantis that is fearless and enjoys fighting. It is a carnivore that consumes various insects and is afraid of fire. The alarm on Feng Shu's watch beeps, and it is already 10 o'clock. He tells everyone to stop writing, put their pen down, and submit their papers. A person arrives and gathers their papers, advising everyone not to leave the office because they will receive their results there. 1 hour later, the results are released, and they will mention the names of individuals who passed the exam. Feng Shu takes the names of those who have passed the exam, including Wang Shu and Zhang Hong. Wang Shu teases Gao Peng for not passing the exam and claims that he must have failed. Gao Peng believes that this is not feasible because he was correct in what he wrote and would not fail unless the system was at fault. Feng Shu asks which of them is Gao Peng, and Gao Peng stands up. Feng Shu is overjoyed and says that he received full marks on the test. He didn't expect somebody so young to perform so well. He referred to him as a child hero and applauded him. Hearing this, everyone in the exam hall wonders how he can be a full scorer when he appears like a high school student. Gao Peng turns to Wang Shu, smirks, and reminds him that he achieved full grades. Wang Shu is annoyed and envious of Gao Peng. The winners of the first round join Feng Shu, who gives his fingerprint authentication and opens a door. Gao Peng notices and wonders how huge this place is. This was the second step of their monster breeder exam, the practical test. As they enter the massive area, they notice that there are doors. Feng Shu informs them that the monsters given by the association can be found in these rooms behind the doors. To pass the examination, They must improve the grade of these monsters in 1 week, and the association will cover all fees associated with the monsters. However, there was one condition. If they failed to improve the monster, they would have to pay its market value. There were also additional rules, such as not being allowed to use excess materials, as doing so would result in failure. Hearing the terms and conditions has everyone on edge. Then comes Li Jin with a box. He's the branch examiner. He instructs everyone to come up and select a card that will determine which creature they will receive for the practical exam. Gao Peng believes that using this method will not allow him to predict the monster he will receive, and the monster breeder exam was as difficult as they claim. Everyone is in the queue, and Wang Shu smiles as if he wants Gao Peng to fail the exam. Gao Peng, on the other hand, wishes for a nice one and takes a gulp before drawing a card. Zhang Hong also pulls from the box and claims to have received room 6, prompting Gao Peng to respond with a smirk that he has received room 10. After everyone has chosen their rooms, they are instructed to look for them. Feng Xiu announces the start of the practical examination. Gao Peng travels to room number 10, where he meets Zhou Yuan, the person in charge of that room, who says he will assist Gao Peng with whatever he wants. Gao Peng swipes the card and stares intently with crimson eyes. In the room behind bars, he sees a black monster with crimson eyes. Gao Peng reads the monster's details, which state that it is a red river ape of level 10 with a normal grade. This creature is ill, and its weakness is the yin characteristic. He is perplexed to learn about this monster, so he questions Zhou Yuan, the guy in authority, about what happened to the red river apes. He discovers that because he was experimented on too many times, he was loaded with opposing energies and should have been removed. But because the association had no more monsters to put through the practical exam, they kept the red river ape. While expressing this, Zhou Yuan recalls confronting Li Jin about putting the red river ape on the monster test list. But, to his amazement, he was silenced by his remarks, which stated that he had his own ideas. Wang Shu and Li Jin conspired to deceive Gao Peng. According to Zhou Yuan, the red river ape has survived so far because of its tenacity and perseverance, but it has a slim chance of improving. Because of what happened with the red river ape, Zhou Yuan invites Gao Peng to come for the practical test the next time, and he promises to keep his written scores until then. Gao Peng takes a moment to look at the red river ape and decides that he will choose it for his exam rather than give up. Hearing Gao Peng make his decision, Zhou Yuan wishes him success and exits the room. On the other side, the ape approaches Gao Peng in self-defense and recalls a period when he was experimented on and mistreated. This memory was not pleasant for him to recall, and he becomes enraged, grips the bars, and roars. As tears stream down his cheeks, Gao Peng kneels and rubs the ape's head with his palm, causing him to relax. He reassures him not to worry and that he is there to help him. Gao Peng's initial goal is to determine the red river ape's needs and possessions. He then understands that he already has a normal evolution that eliminates yin poisons from the body, and that it is necessary to progress to the superior grade of river ape. Additionally, evolution follows 2 different routes. There are 2 types of evolution: normal evolution, which requires a lot of materials, and distorted pathological warping evolution, which requires very little. He chooses the distorted pathological warping evolution because it will fit his budget and require very little material. His eyes sparkle, and he realizes he must take the risk to enhance this monster. He selects the deformed pathological warping evolution, which displays all of the components he requires, including the black candle grass, which he must feed 3 times per day for 3 days, and the elite ghoul-attributed core crystal, which must be fed after 3 days. Then they must combine the luminous powder, skull mushroom, and withering grass with sulfuric acid and bathe the red river ape in it. He reads it, then passes the item list to Zhao Yang, who informs Gao Peng that these elements are poisonous and wonders if he is trying to murder the red river ape by feeding him or upgrading him. Gao Peng responds that this is a serious sickness that requires treatment as potent as that. He then tells him to relax and that he understands what he's doing. Zhao Yuan glances at it, then underestimates him, believing that he is just another guy who obtains full marks on his written exam, but not on his practical exam. 3 days have passed. There are people who face major consequences for themselves. They have no idea what is wrong with their materials and monster breeding, why they aren't upgrading, and what went wrong. They believe it is incorrect because they fulfilled the material and measurement standards, but received no results. The red river ape, on the other hand, has eaten everything indicated by the material and is reviewing its list to see how it affects him as well. The only task remaining for him was to soak in the sulfuric acid mixture. Gao Peng examines the key provided to him by Zhao Yuan. He informs him that this was the cage for the monsters provided by the association, but that the ape had been experimented on and tortured, so he must be cautious. Gao Peng realizes it's difficult to communicate with a monster who isn't in a blood contract, and that the Red River Ape has its own perils. But at this stage, he has to have trust. He examines the key that was given to him carefully, and approaches the Red River Ape, telling him that he will let him out on one condition. He must be obedient, and the key that was given to him was the key to the cage in which he was kept, and then Gao Peng tells him to come out. As soon as he orders him to come out, he comes and leaps on Gao Peng, and Gao Peng is scared because he thought he would be obedient, and then suddenly the Red River Ape hugs him and places his head on his chest. Gao Peng caresses his head and tells him he can leave now. After all of this, he takes the Red River Ape to the sulfuric acid mixture and instructs him to be a good boy and soak himself in there, promising that it will be very beneficial for him. To test the sulfuric acid mixture, the Red River Ape pulls out a few fur from his body, and when he puts that into the sulfuric acid mixture, he sees that something comes out of it, and it's black. It's black energy. It comes out of it, and seeing that, the Red River Ape is horrified and starts crying and shaking his head, stating he will not go into it. But Gao Peng says he can trust him and will give him the power to be brave, and he caresses his head, and the Red River Ape looks at him with trust. The Red River Ape is now prepared to immerse himself in the sulfuric acid mixture, and Gao Peng observes from behind how tragic it is to witness the ape go through this process once more, because he has been tortured and used extensively in the past. As soon as the ape does so, a lot of black smoke emerges, which causes Gao Peng to cough. The emergency siren then inevitably activates, and soon after, the people seated in the camera rooms have already called other staff to inform them that the fire alarm has been set off in room number 10, and that everyone must evacuate before the fire breaks out. The staff got the extinguisher and went to the location, but were wondering what was going on and thought it was caused by the young boy operating in room 10, which was Gao Peng. They all wanted to go and look together, so they just ran to room number 10, where we saw that Wang Shu was now grinning wickedly, and that he seemed to think the money he spent to fail Gao Peng would not be wasted. When the staff arrived, they noticed that there was only smoke instead of fire, and they wondered if it was a false alarm. Turning around, Gao Peng asks them why they are there. Zhao Yun responded that he made a mistake and caused a commotion by setting off the fire alarm. They had to come to check, and Gao Peng apologized, saying he was too preoccupied with his work to notice the alarm. Later, Zhao Yun switches on the walkie-talkie and informs the authorities that everything is fine in this room, that the fire alarm should be turned off, and that nothing is amiss. Feng Xiu then enters room number 10 and inquires as to what is happening. Zhao Yun responds that this alarm was caused by Gao Peng, who is raising a monster. Other people also try to look into the room, and they talk about how there was a lot of noise and that Gao Peng doesn't have the experience to breed the monster inside the room. From the outside of the room, Feng Xiu thinks this experiment has failed and that this is his last time here, but gradually, something begins to form in the sulfuric acid mixture, and everyone notices that the Red River Ape is now emerging from the water. He looks completely different. His fingers have changed, and he has turned purplish blue. People believe he is a ghost when he emerges with a massive improvement, and they are terrified and appalled as they see him emerge. Gaping discovers that this creature has been enhanced. The Red River Ape has finally been upgraded to level 11, which is a very elite tier, and he has emerged into a skull jail ape. His condition is weak, but he is excited, and there are very light attributes of his weakness. Feng Shu, Li Jin, and Zhao Yang all recognize that this is the Red River Ape, and that Gao Peng is not just talk, but a real action kid. They are all shocked to see this. Gao Peng is now in shock that this worked, and that his system is so strong that he thinks he can breed and evolve any kind of monster as long as he has enough materials. In the meantime, Gao Peng is taking care of the River Ape, who is now transformed into a skull ghoul ape, and he realizes that he has grown larger and that his bone has a lot of mass and it looks like it's made of metal. Li Jin then speaks with Feng Shu, stating that this is a unique monster that has never been seen before, and that having a ghoul is a very rare trait. Feng Shu understands that the ghoul attribute is extremely uncommon, and since this isn't the new monster species, he questions how Gao Peng even created it. After hearing these words, Gao Peng turns around and informs Feng Shu that he has evolved the Red River Ape into a skull ghoul ape, and as anticipated, he passed the test. Now, the ape has discovered Gao Peng. Now, after examining Gao Peng and wanting to talk to him, the ape tugs his shirt. Gao Peng is now massaging his fingers, gives him a gentle pat, and asks if there is anything he needs to be happy about, adding that he has assisted him in raising his creed. Holding his hand, Gao Peng says this: now that he wants to, the skull ghoul ape is very emotional and gives him a lot of looks. Li Jin now makes the decision that he wants this monster to be his, since it has a very high standard. He currently has an excellent work ethic, so this should be a natural fit for him. Instead of handing it to the staff, Feng Shu gives it to Gao Peng since they understand that the monster is quite devoted to him and can have him. Li Jin and Zhao Yuan are stunned, wondering how Gao Peng could have it. He even asks himself if this is really necessary for him. Gao Peng is then shocked to learn that he has been given the monster, and Feng Shu reassures him that, although it is not listed, it cannot be argued that anything can be said about his data. They have nothing to lose because it appears that Gao Peng has successfully evolved the ape. Therefore, he asks Gao Peng if he wants to take the monster with him. Although Gao Peng believes it hasn't fully evolved, he discovers that there was a monster of standard grade before it became perfect. All they need to do is wait until level 20. Additionally, the monster will be promoted to a commander tier monster, which is even more exceptional than a level 11 monster once it reaches level 20. Since it's reasonable to assume that this monster is already a commander tier monster, Gao Peng believes he does want to take this. Zhao Yun now believes that this Red River ape is not the same Red River ape as before, and that it would be detrimental if he didn't accept it since the Red River monkey might wish to accompany him. As the ape continues to want to speak with Gao Peng, Li Jin enters and states that he does not believe Gao Peng should accept it, and that the monster should be sent to the association to be awarded to the employee with the highest work ethic. Furthermore, there is no way to determine what progress it has made because it has already undergone 6 experiments. Wang Shu even enters and asserts that it is correct, and that this monster ought to have been vanquished earlier. They all accuse him of cheating and wonder how someone so young could accomplish something so significant. They are now confronted by Feng Shu about their belief that Gao Peng has cheated. They claim that it is not that the young guy cheated, but rather that it is so hard that no beginner could have handled such a monster. They also claim that Gao Peng, the young boy, discovered a technique somewhere and accidentally healed the monster, which is how the outcome came about. Feng Shu then addresses them, asking if the results should be deemed illegitimate if this was merely the product of his luck. They respond that it's not invalid, but success is the ultimate outcome. Therefore, the ape should not be handed to him, but the certificate should. Additionally, he cites the association's tradition, which causes Feng Shu to burst out laughing. He then claims to have had a great time, and Feng Shu believes that he wasn't too severe with Li Jin. He informs him that many breeders in this world are extremely pampered and believe they are living their best lives. When he says this, he challenges Li Jin and confronts him to demonstrate his abilities. If they are that strong, then there will always be someone stronger than them. He says this while pointing to Gao Peng. So Gao Peng responds that he's only here to get a certificate, not to get into trouble, and he confronts the opposers that just because he passed, it's because he's young, that he cheated, and that he couldn't, and that just because they couldn't do it doesn't mean he couldn't, and that if he did, it's because he got lucky. Gao Peng addresses them with confidence, stating that they are not only inept, but also lack knowledge, and that because he achieved it, they believe it was impossible. But how could they believe he could cheat? Although in this world, when the Red River ape name appears, it has nothing to do with water. It simply comes from the Red River, which runs next to the natural habitat, and it is not a water attribute monster, just because of the river name in it. And people believe that it is a water-attributed monster, and that this thought was very foolish. Gao Peng informs everyone there about the previous mistakes made with the ape, stating that they had given it a lot of water and yin-type ingredients, which actually made him weak. This is a well-known fact that anyone who has lived this long must be aware of, and it is extremely stupid if they are unaware of this point. Feng Shu responds that although the Red River ape fears the wood-type attribute, the yin-type attribute is really his vulnerability. This was also one of the test points he had to provide when Wang Shu challenged him and rebelled against Gao Peng. Gao Peng goes on to claim that he had to work in a very unusual way since all of the previous experiments with the ape had made him extremely red and had produced bone marrow, which meant that it had to be completely removed from his body. As a result, he lost a lot of energy. He goes on to explain that he gave him black candle grass to boost his strength over the last 3 days, and that there's no need to conceal the materials he used. However, he cautions against experimenting with the ape because it's a very important procedure and the quantity and order of materials are already used. He can tell that he doesn't know what will happen to the monsters that were experimented on, but he can also tell that he doesn't know what will happen to the monsters if they were experimented on in this way. Nevertheless, since the Red River ape is extinct, a child like him won't accept any responsibility. Feng Shu claps his hands and expresses pride in his youthful, fearless boy. He notes that with these skills, obtaining a basic monster breeder certificate would be unfair. Instead, he can be granted an intermediate monster breed certificate. He tells them that he will need to go to Yangjin headquarters to pass the assessment in order to receive the advanced monster breeder certificate, and that he just needs to put in a lot of effort. After Gao Peng thanks the director, Feng Shu, he turns around and becomes enraged with Li Jin and Feng Shu, stating that he is the director and that his director title was merely for show if he couldn't tell who was being dishonest. Feng Shu now wants to find out who was spreading rumors that the Red River ape was only an experimental product. Both Li Jin and Feng Shu are scared because, after hearing all the chaos, people outside believe that Li Jin is strange and always opposes Gao Peng, and that Feng Shu has a mental illness. Zhao Yan raises his hands as he exits the room and informs Feng Shu that Li Jin purposefully included the Red River ape in the test list's name because Feng Shu had bought off Li Jin. The evidence is in the monster transfer records, and they will find out when they examine them. As Wang Shu hits the ground, he realizes that he has used all of his efforts. After hearing this, Feng Shui declares that Li Jin has been sacked from the association and will never be hired again, and that Wang Shu is now disqualified and will not be allowed to take the test for the next 3 years. Because they deserve it, everyone outside is quite thrilled. Gao Peng responds that he needs a favor when Feng Shu offers to bring him to his office for a drink and apologizes for whatever occurred today. Gao Peng is now extremely pleased that he passed the test, obtained the Intermediate Monster Breeder certification, and named the Skull Cowl Ape Dubby because he enjoys sitting in a daze when left alone. He can use the 30 points he receives to improve his score on the college entrance exam, and he also receives a free monster. Gao Peng is welcomed to Feng Shu's office, where he is informed that he can compete in the next monster breeding contest on behalf of Chang'an City. It doesn't matter if you are an elder, middle-aged adult, or even a young teen. Everyone starts from the same place, but since you are so young and have a lot of potential, you should definitely shine. Gao Peng asks which monster breeder tournament is the world one. Feng Shu responds that it is. There are just a few talented breeders in this city, and for the past few years they have never been good, and they never had good results. Given that, only a small number of competitors will get a consolation prize of 10,000 credits, and that it would be extremely self-centered if Gao Peng chose not to participate. Feng Shu wonders if Gao Peng is interested in the international global tournament. With a confident demeanor, Gao Peng abruptly rises from his chair and tells him that it's nothing, but that tremendous power comes with a big responsibility. He then questions whether he truly needs to attend the tournament. People were discussing him and the Skull Ghoul ape on the bus, and they were really interested in hearing about it. While on the bus, he thinks it is extremely difficult for Gao Peng to raise Daji because he is so young and very handsome for his age, but he is also talented, so he believes he can do it. In the bus, Gao Peng keeps thinking about the 10,000 credit prize and what he can do with it, but he is unable to choose what he wants to do. For this reason, he has no choice but to sell Dumpy, the monster ape, and the fact that Daji already eats a lot means the ape would also have a big appetite. The ape follows Gao Peng as he arrives at his destination after they exit the bus. Gao Peng is perplexed as to why the ape threw him over to the side as they were walking. When he asked him, he discovered that the ape was only defending him from an attack. He introduces his monster pet, Daji, and tells the ape that they are a family. He notices that Daji has grown significantly and has become very fat. He then asks Sister Tang what happened to Daji, and she responds that she fed him a lot and made him healthy and extremely strong. Gao Peng is incensed because this is unhealthy. It is overnutrition, and he wonders why being overnourished is referred to as strong and healthy. According to Sister Tang, she fed Daji since he was always extremely thin. The ape and Daji are looking at each other in the meantime, and the ape is rather proud of himself since he is stronger than Daji, to which Gao Peng responds that as a normal student, they gave him a monster who had failed to evolve 6 times, but because of his effort and the monster's cooperation, he became an intermediate monster breeder and even got the certificate and was gifted with the monster he evolved. Sister Tang then turns the conversation from Daji to his exams and asks how his exam went today. He brought it with him since he didn't want to humiliate himself by turning down the monster. Sister Tang is shocked to learn that Gao Peng has earned the Intermediate Breeder Certificate. She asks him if this is true, and he says that it's quite unexpected that he is growing so quickly. She also tells him that monster breeders enjoy such a high status because of how well-versed and well-trained they are in monsters. Sister Tang informs him that they have no defense other than breeding monsters, because monster breeders might be killed with a single gunshot or a sniper. Gao Peng concludes that the only way to protect himself is to become a monster trainer. Sister Tang thus inquires as to whether he would like to become a monster trainer. Sitting in a meditative position, Gao Peng learns about the secret familiar technique, which is a way to transfer damage from one body to another. Although it can only be used on familiar bodies, he understands that mastering this technique will benefit him as he will get additional health and defense. After learning, he feels connected to Dazi by an unseen string. He believes Sister Tang Tang is not as simple as she appears. He was sitting on his sofa when Dazi approached and looked at Gao Peng. Gao Peng comments on Dazi's weight gain, comparing him to a big purple pig. Daisy answers, prompting Gao Peng to request a mirror from Dambi the ape. Gao Peng holds the mirror in front of Daisy, and Daisy appears himself and morphs into a stone, implying that he is surprised to learn that he has become really fat. Gao Peng advises him to exercise and lose weight before upgrading him to a higher level. Daisy dreams of becoming a flying centipede, which irritates Gao Peng. Gao Peng and Sister Tang cross paths in the city. Sister Tang, the beautiful lady, is currently mocking Gao Peng, the charming breeder, for being an intermediate monster breeder. She informs the charming breeder of the circumstances she would confront. She brings him to a site and mentions her past job experience. She brings him to a site and explains that she previously worked with a partner to build a monster breeding agency, but he stole all of her invested money in the monster breeders and abandoned her. Gao Peng remarks that this site isn't as horrible as it appears. It's in the heart of the city on the most luxurious streets, and the rent isn't cheap here either. According to the lady, the region used to be a thriving industry, but with the departure of monster breeders, business has been quiet. Internally, Gao Peng believes Sister Tang is acting strangely, but he follows her upstairs and she shows him the work studio on the 3rd floor. She offers him the best price for the business and 20% of the company share, but it won't affect his studies. He only needs to come here on weekends and the monster breeder job is simple. Gao Peng questioned why she was hiring him when she could have hired 2 monster breeders for the same amount of price. It turns out that the beautiful lady prefers a single employee to a number of them. Sister Tang says even if she does not have monster breeders, she cannot risk destroying the shop's name. Gao Peng believes she has good management powers, and because the studio is in a posh area of town and the pay is so large, he can't dispute it. He wants to wonder whether this is a trap, but Sister Tang has been an orphan for the last 3 years, and if it hadn't been for her care, he would have battled to make ends meet. He subsequently decides to dismiss it and believes that Sister Tang will never hurt him. However, if he gets paid so well and his abilities are not that outstanding, he would have to work hard to make money for her. After much contemplation and thought, he comes to a resolution and informs her that he will listen to her and accept the offer. Tang appreciates his cooperation and she is quite worried inwardly because first things went well. However, she was hiding something from Gao Peng, which is highly suspicious, and she's happy that he didn't find out about it. The staircase opens. They enter the floor, where they meet a really lovely girl with gorgeous round eyes and hair, and Sister Tang is greeted. She presents Gao Peng to the receptionist, Xun Quan. She informs him that she has explained everything to her, and that she will familiarize him with the workplace and his co-workers. She swiftly says her goodbyes and goes to work. Gao Peng is concerned that there are too many suspicious things about this, but decides to stay quiet. The receptionist directs him to register his details. While the receptionist is at her seat, she wonders how young he is. She believes he is a scammer based on his details. Meanwhile, Gao Peng thinks that if he wants to make a lot of money for Sister Tang, he'll have to set a standard price, but because it's different from others, they must obey his directions. His success record is 100%, which will be beneficial for advertising, and at this rate, he could charge the same amount as the majority of breeders. It will not be only about money, but he will take it less, and he will be more knowledgeable. He continues thinking that it would also be insulting to trick the codes, and he would just suffer more. Based on the current price, he will take it and double it 3-fold. The lovely receptionist returns and hands him his registration, which is now complete. She asks whether he truly wants to decide the price at 3 times the average intermediate master breeder, but because he has no prior business experience, he won't have any clients for a while. The studio has a very excellent reputation. Gao Peng is perplexed and wonders what she is trying to convey. Suddenly, someone rushes into the room. He's a tall man with a rigid stance, and he wails that Gao Peng must prove himself worthy of it if he has uttered such words. The receptionist addresses him as Mr. Ma. He replies that even if Gao Peng charges 3 times the customary fee, he will gladly pay tenfold as long as he can heal his familiar. The tall man tells Gao Peng if he successfully promotes his monster, he will give him 10 times more money. Gao Peng replies that even though the man is a big deal, 3 times the amount is enough for him, and he doesn't need 10 times. The tall man is feeling calmer now and asks if he is sure he can take care of his monster pet. Gao Peng says he's not in a hurry and will check on his monster. The tall man believes him and shows him his monster pet, which is very small. It turns out that the small pet is bleeding and it is actually a rat. It's a purple electric rat at level 19. It is electric and has a small injury that is bothering it. Its weakness is mud. Gao Peng sees all this and understands that there is a danger that needs to be fixed. He asks what the rat was fed to become like this. Then the tall man remembers he gave the rat a special food called blood jade gynoderma, thinking it would help it evolve. But it didn't happen, and now he is begging Gao Peng to help his pet. Gao Peng rests his chin on his hand and thinks that the rat is changing and hurting because of its blood and electric traits. He then checks all the materials needed for the upgrade. He follows the rules set by the system, and as long as he has the right materials and meets the requirements, he can successfully upgrade it. The charming guy asks the receptionist to get some items for him: 5 shadow fruits, 5 scarlet marble pits, 50 golden lightning leaves, and 1 crystal from a bloodbath monster. She agrees and goes to get them. While she's gone, Gao Peng asks the tall man if he followed the breeder rules. After that, they plan how to get the materials, but he has to pay for them himself. The tall man says there is no issue as long as the pet rat is okay. Gao Peng tells the rat that he will do his best to help it get better. Later, he takes the rat to the treatment room, where all the supplies are ready. He puts on a glove and an apron. Outside the room, the receptionist and a tall man are looking in through the glass window. They are scared and confused about what is happening. They wonder if this is the way to help the red thing change. They ask him if he is really sure about it. He replies that he is very sure this method can help. Gao Peng calms him down and puts something into a pot of soup that is on the stove. When he adds it, purple energy begins to appear, which is the energy of Yang. He asks if the tall man wants some soup made from his rat. Later, he explains that it was just a joke to make everyone laugh. Gao Peng says this was just a special soup that will help the pet rat get better and heal. It's a special medical bath made just for him. The tall man knows that they need to stay calm. He just needs to stay calm so his pet rat can get better. Even though there are many well-known monster breeders, it's hard to get an appointment with them. Gao Peng, who is just an average monster breeder, doesn't know how to help, and if things go wrong, he thinks he can handle it his own way. After a few minutes, Gao Peng tells the tall man not to worry because the monster is healing quickly. Suddenly, the lid of the container pops open. The monster pet jumps out, making a big mess in the treatment room and throwing things around. They are happy that their monster pet has finally evolved. Gao Peng was able to do this. The monster is now a purple electric blood mouse, which is an elite level 20 creature. It has 2 attributes: electricity and blood. The tall man is lucky to have a perfect creature with 2 attributes. All he needs to do now is train it, and it will become a commander-level monster. The tall man apologizes for being rude and doesn't expect to be helped so well. He thanks Gao Peng sincerely and leaves. Gorang gives him a receipt for the money spent on his services and for damages to the office, reminding him to pay for everything. Gao Peng gives a list to the pretty receptionist and asks him to send all the items to his house, taking the cost out of his paycheck. The tall man wants Gao Peng to see another pet and asks if he can set up a meeting for tomorrow. He says money won't be a problem and he will pay 3 times for the other pet. Doping responds that it's not about the money, but he has classes and is only free on the weekends. The tall man can't believe that Gao Peng is still in his classes. Gao Peng says that he is a senior in his 3rd year. They are all very surprised to find out that he is still in high school. The receptionist says that Sister Tang spent a lot of money to buy this studio to get rid of all the monster breeders and asked to keep it a secret. She thought that Gao Peng was just being treated as a toy for rich people, but did not expect him to be this capable. Sister Tang Tang is seated on her couch, holding a core crystal between her fingers. She sends the core crystal with her invisible lizard monster to Gao Peng's room and tosses it at the centipede that was beneath his bed. The centipede and skull ghoul ape glance at the core crystal, and Dazi appears and consumes it. The ape is horrified and attempts to stop, but Dazi has completely eaten it and is now experiencing a response. Gao Peng was on his way home with 7.5 kilograms of yin cedar needles and a month's supply of food for Dumby, and he believed that if he continued to upgrade Dumby in this manner, he would reach epic level. He is aware of the epic grade from television and books, and in order to nurture Dumby for the time being, he must consider its next development, followed by his thoughts on how to improve Dazi. He believes that Dazi will develop after at least having 10 electric monster core crystals, which is extremely difficult to get, and even if he does, he will be unable to purchase them. While he was contemplating, he noticed a loud noise coming from his apartment, which sounded like Dumby to him. He thinks something has happened at home and goes to his residence. He unlocks the gate and calls out Dumby's name. He notices the centipede, his monster pet Dazi, lying on the floor. His level was rising after consuming a large amount of Thunder Titan centipede meat and a monster core crystal, indicating that the material belonged to a centipede species and fit the prerequisites for its development, which is currently underway. Gao Peng is taken aback by this, since he doesn't understand how Dazi obtained the core crystal. He thinks about it, and he is aware of how pricey this core is. Then he suddenly recalls Sister Tang Tang, who must have handed it to Dazi. Sister Tang Tang enters at the moment, and Gao Peng asks her if she is the one who fed it to him. She responds that if she had informed him beforehand, he would have rejected the idea, which is why she fed it to Dazi without informing him. She then brings 2 bags full of ingredients, saying that he has earned a couple of days' pay, and how could he splurge like that, so she gives him some materials and leaves. Gao Peng now chastises Dazi for forbidding him from eating everything he catches or what comes to his sight. He realizes he can't leave Dazi in this state since evolution is ongoing and nothing he tries will succeed. He takes out a number of potions, nuts and bolts, and crystals, and then discovers a branch with a purple blossom and several leaves. He considers grinding this purple poison flower to create a potion that will speed up Dazi's evolution. He grinds it and feeds it to Dazi, who begins to exude fumes of red and yellow color. Dazi has now developed. He has big thorns, long legs, and pointed legs. He has now evolved into a level 9 purple-bagged thunder centipede, with the twin attributes of thunder and poison. Gao Peng is aware that evolution has occurred, but he is unaware that Dazi can get such high grades effortlessly. Dumby, on the other hand, is extremely worried about Dazi. Even though Dazi is concerned and irritates him a lot, Dumby is concerned about Dazi, but he discovers that Dazi is simply fatigued. Gao Peng then speaks with Dumby, giving him food to eat and telling him that, despite his evolution, he is still so enormous and gorgeous, and that he is extremely nice, which does not harm him. Dumby grabs the food and eats it, and he immediately shrinks. Dumby is perplexed, but Gao Peng encourages him to be a nice boy and keep eating, and that even though he is done developing, it is best for him to be stabilized before looking for proper resources to evolve again, and he promises him that he would undoubtedly become stronger and larger. Dazi is awake, and he feels powerful and confident. He notices Gao Peng and Dumby lying on the couch, relaxing, so he decides to drape a sheet around him and lie next to him. Sister Tang, his neighbor, glances out the window and notices the three of them together, and she is amazed at how rapidly Gao Peng has matured. At Gao Peng's school, in the principal's office, there is a chat between the principal and another guy. The principal is furious, banging his palm on the table and declaring that he cannot allow a monster inside the school since all of the students are still children. They are not properly trained to deal with monsters, and no one else has considered the pupils' safety. The man in front of me is terrified and claims that they already have weapons to defend the country, but in these times, people their age are still considered children. The principal realizes how serious the situation is, and the person in front of him informs him that, despite the fact that the world is evolving and there are new technologies, the school is extremely sluggish, and if this continues, they will be very late, and everything must have gone too far. In Gao Peng's class, one of his pals calls him and asks whether he actually became an intermediate monster breeder, and Gao Peng is astonished to learn how they found out about his being a breeder. He learns that he has made the news, and everyone in the class comes to congratulate him and express their pride that Gao Peng is now a monster breeder. Soon after, one of them expresses sadness for Li Zhigong since his mother was also at the center, and when he returned home, his mother drove him to work extremely hard, making his life difficult. When his buddy informs him that he has a very small request, but that it might be very difficult to fulfill, Gao Peng advises him to keep it to himself. He states that it is already tough, which means that it would only make things more difficult for both of them in the end, to which his friend becomes enraged and fists his hands. The instructor enters, quite upset, and beats the boy's head with paper before instructing everyone to assemble here or return to their seats because they want to make an announcement. The teacher began yelling, so everyone rushed to their seats. The instructor begins to announce that starting immediately, every school in the globe will be undergoing an emergency reform, which will include a new familiar class in your second senior year. At the same time, a new scholarship option has been established for the gifted monster-trained student. This is a new initiative developed together by the Alliance Education Department and the Alliance Military. She goes on to add that those who are talented with monsters can enroll straight in any of the top-ranked colleges or military universities, while those who want to be gifted monster student trainers must visit her after class to sign up. Following the instructor's leaves, following the teacher's announcement, the pupils start debating among themselves. What if the city is in danger? They want to know if something significant is occurring since there is military participation, and they think that it is getting serious. With everything done, the instructor contacts Gao Peng because she has something to say to him. She informs him that she and the principal are quite happy with him because he received his intermediate monster breeding license straight, and that the principal praised him a lot during the meeting. With that, the school would want to send a representative from Gao Peng to deliver a speech to the incoming freshmen. He informs his instructor, Miss Murong, that he does not need to deliver a speech because it is a very high-profile event that does not fit him, but he does want to sign up as a gifted monster student trainer. The teacher marvels how he suddenly had that notion because that's a wonderful path, but she thinks it won't mean anything to him. While staring out the window, she informs him how wonderful his results are, and that if his standard does not slip, he will be eligible for admission to any top-ranked university in the country, as well as others. So, if he truly wanted to be a battle monster trainer, He might use his literary test to get into the military university and enroll in the appropriate degree. After that, Gao Peng thanks Miss Morang for her advice, but he believes it is safer to become a monster trainer, and he plans to become one after he enrolls in a military institution. Because it is so sluggish, he wants to learn more from actual fighting so that he may get stronger. He asks his teacher if he may take both exams at the same time since he refuses to give up on either one. The teacher assures him not to worry, that he may take the exam his own way, with his own ideas, and that the teacher will not stop him. He bows and thanks her as she departs. In the afternoon, all of the pupils are quite confident. They are all going to participate in the audition. From the crowd, a boy calls out to Gao Peng, who swings around to see whether it is Tan Qianjin. He asks Gao Peng about why he was being a monster breeder when his results are simply too good, to which he responds that Tan Qianjin's results are also good. So by that logic, he should not sign up for it either. The ombre-haired youngster says he didn't sign up for it because he has his own dream, and that he used to watch Pocket Monsters, where all of the creatures were great. Since he wants to be the partner of the strongest, he can't pass up this opportunity. Then Gao Peng asks if he would still want to be the partner if the most powerful monster trainer is a man. His friend hears this discouraging thing and simply walks away. Following that, everyone is assembled on the basketball court. They saw the newest armored vehicle for the first time with their own eyes. It was quite harsh and intimidating. The colonel steps up to the platform. The ombre-haired boy wonders if the colonel is their instructor. Except for being a little tougher, he doesn't appear to be very unique. Suddenly, the director looks at him with the corner of his eye. The youngster is shaken to the core from fear. Gao Peng perceives the director as unusual. The colonel-director begins his speech and talks to the pupils and tells them that without a strong head and steely determination, they would do nothing more than soil their pants in fear. He tells them that when they see actual white creatures, their legs will shake and they will be unable to run. All of the pupils are enraged and revolt, claiming that they will not be looked down upon, because they have seen monsters before and are not scared of them. With that being said, the colonel orders to bring out a huge monster who looks like a huge white fox and has bluish-white eyes. One army man arrives and informs the colonel that the thick wall, which was 10 centimeters of Type 3 armor plate, is ready. The colonel orders the monster to go. Hearing the order, the monster rushed towards the thick plate and demolished it. Gao Peng is surprised that the monster has so much energy to demolish it in one hit only. Seeing this monstrosity in front of them, the colonel says that this is their final opportunity, and this is how monsters are, and how they would confront them, or even a more powerful monster. Sure, if they're terrified and want to leave, they can. Hearing this, several students depart, as if swept away by their excitement. The colonel yells at them to keep their heads down. It's not as though they did anything illegal. He also advises them to study hard since it is a wonderful route, but they are not deserters. They simply need to make a reasonable decision and get out of there so they may return to school. Everyone finally understood what the colonel was saying. As a result, Gao Peng is currently at his apartment, lying on his couch on his face, as the day had been quite taxing for him. Dazi and Dumby appear shortly. They come to him and claim they're hungry. According to the Open, based on the colonel's statements, just 1,200 children from schools around the city enrolled within a month will be remaining, and the rate of elimination is far too high. He notices that the yin cedar needles are absent after he has ceased it completely. He wonders where they've gone since there's only one stick remaining. He questions Dazi and Dumby about what happened to the stick. Dazi claims that Dumpy ate it. He sighs and stares at him, saying that if he wants to eat more, he may just tell him. Dumby listens and simply sits facing the wall. Gao Peng sits and orders 15 kg yin cedar noodles and 5 kg thunder figs. He knows that Dumby has a good appetite, and if this continues, he will evolve very soon. His major worry right now was Dazi. To advance Dazi, he must feed him 100 kilograms of thunder figs, which are somewhat less expensive than yin cedar needles at 200 alliance dollars every 500 grams. He is fatigued because he understands feeding his family is getting increasingly tough. He comes to school and notices this plenty of creatures have been inside. It feels like a zoo has sprung up within. He glances at a large pig that is situated at the school entrance. He notices an innocent girl standing close to the pig and asks whether this is her monster pet because it was obstructing the road. The girl is torn because the pig has grown significantly since the last time he ate. The adorable girl stated that when she originally brought it, it did not appear like this, and she had no idea what it was trying to communicate. The army man eventually arrives and inquires as to what is going on. It turns out that he is their instructor. He discovers that a familiar is obstructing the road, and it happens to be a pig. The instructor's monster pet, which is a wolf, follows her orders to resolve this, and goes up to the pig with a threatening glare and a low growl. The pig, who is now scared shitless of the wolf, moves away quickly. The instructor then orders the training to begin quickly, without wasting any time. It was on that day, as a crucial component of their training, they began honing their skills with their familiars. Otherwise, they won't follow their orders, regardless of how powerful their creation becomes. The instructor advises that before they can establish a flawless relationship with their familiar, they must first grasp its behaviors and likes and dislikes. He goes on to say things like for his silver moon wolf, he brought him a black armored peg, and then he had to feed him by himself. He played with it and slept with it every day. And that's how it is. He is now trusted, and this silver moon wolf does what he says. He goes on to explain that his training has given his monster more power and a wider variety of attacks. Next up is Lao Li, who demonstrates the silver moon wolf's proficiency. He orders every pupil to pay close attention. When the monstrous wolf displays the strength of his bite, Gao Peng and Dazi are startled and alarmed. The lecturer explains that familiars can serve many purposes simultaneously. They come in 5 different varieties: aggressive, defensive, supported, therapeutic, and dominant. The green devil wine, for instance, has the ability to be both field-controlling and defensive. Additionally, some skills can teach it to be hostile as well, but just for show. The teacher permits pupils who have already made the decision to follow the training path and come to pick up the training materials. What may Dazi's strength be, Gao Peng thinks? Since they share a blood bond, any harm that Gao Peng sustains will be transmitted to Dazi, and self-defense is becoming increasingly important. However, Hao thinks of a way to strengthen its defense. Yet, he is taken aback by the ape about how it could transport a box that large, indicating that it's most likely an aggressive ape. He gets the notion from looking at the ape. He recalls reading about the hairless mutant ape known as the monster box ape. Since its thinning hair isn't much of a defense, its parents trained it to continuously strike trees with its body after it was born, making the trees incapable of harming it. Instead, it struck the cliffs or rocks. This behavior was repeated by the boxing ape, and its distorted skin hardened. Following all of these events, it developed thick muscles and developed scars that resembled an armor shield. Even if it struck a cliff, it couldn't get hurt right then. Gao Peng believes that by using this training approach, he may raise the strength of Dazi. Thus, he must select his training materials. The material that Gao Peng selected was a large hammer. He approaches Dazi and promises to be nice and to obey him. He promises them that he will never have to endure misery again or see the large hammer again, and that this is the only time he has to be in pain. Daisy attempts to flee because he is afraid. With the hammer in hand, Gao Peng chases after Dazi and eventually captures him. His hands were scratched, but a week later, they were fine. When Gao Peng wakes up in the morning, he decides to sleep a bit longer because he has no training that day. But there was something that woke him up. He woke up as Dazi was hungry. Gao Peng then promises to prepare breakfast for him. He first considers how his strength and speed have improved, and how fortunate he is to have grown one size larger, reaching level 10, so it is not a waste to give him additional food. Dummy has also advanced in level. He waits for his dinner while sitting next to Dazi. Gao Peng is really concerned about providing food for those 2 voracious eaters. Gao Peng's phone was on the table beside the dummy. A call pops, and Dumby's hand moves, and he receives it. On the call, it was Liu Senlin from Blue Shield Protection Company as its general manager. He had given him a call to talk about an agreement that would help him, and requested to speak with him face-to-face about it. Gao Peng enters the monster breeder office, and the receptionist informs him that the guest is waiting for him in the reception area. He rushes to meet the guest. They meet, and the guest believes the person in front of him is Mr. Gao. Gao Peng then introduces the guest as the general manager of Blue Shield Protection Firm, whose name is Liu Senlin, and invites him to his firm to serve as their monster breeder consultant. Then they decide to sit and discuss. Gao Peng wonders why they picked him as the monster breeder consultant. He eventually realizes that despite their superior qualities, he does not understand why he needs to work for such a large organization as Blue Shield Protection Company, or why their boss has come to hunt for him. Mr. Liu feels Gao Peng is quite modest. Mr. Liu claims that there are 2 advanced monster breeders in the city, but they are unable to hire their services. One of them is the Director Chen of the Monster Breeder Association, and his hands are already full from running the association alone. How would he find the time to be a consultant for such a small company as theirs? He informs him that the other guy is Mr. Gu Shenlin, the #1 monster breeder who works for the government as a full-time monster breeder consultant. Other intermediate monster breeders choose Mr. Gao Peng over anybody else. Gao Peng thinks about it and says they can talk about the fees later, but he'd want to add a few conditions. If they agree to this condition, their professional relationship will be unaffected. Gao Peng continues to state that he must attend school Monday through Friday, and does not want to be interrupted during these periods in case of an emergency. His second requirement was that he might be a monster breeder consultant but not an exclusive breeder for their firm. He can only ensure that it will not benefit your rivals. Mr. Liu agrees and provides him with a contract that he believes would be appropriate. Gao Peng believes there is something strange about the contract because there are no obligatory criteria, and the yearly pay of 50 alliance credits and commission is included. The commission is 50 alliance credits for each of the company's devil mantises that he needs to develop. He feels this is a straightforward and obvious contract that will benefit him. However, he signs the contract with no limits. The receptionist arrives and announces that Mr. Ma has arrived. Seeing this, Mr. Li takes his leave and departs, thanking him for his cooperation and looking forward to the future. When Mr. Liu arrives, he speaks on the phone with an uncle and says that Mr. Gao has chosen the non-full-time contract and that there are so many monster breeders, but why should they choose him? The person on the phone says something, and he replies that he understands why. After that, Gao Peng proceeds to the treatment room, where he notices that Mr. Ma has purchased another monster breeder, as previously discussed. He was the Begonia semperflorens sprite from Monster Level 3, which was a typical grade. It was made of wood and was in good shape. It has two weaknesses: fire and electricity. To advance to the outstanding grade, he needs 100 drops of lower dew and 100 years of wood essence. He feels the plant is quite attractive and asymmetrical, with burgundy patterns that emit a faint aroma. He questions if he truly wants to evolve this sprite. Mr. Ma claims that in a month there will be a Flower King contest, and he intends to compete for the title. Gao Peng believes that the Flower King contest is not a beauty contest, but that flora are more popular than ghoul monsters due to their medicinal properties, and he cannot believe that this person intends to enter a beauty contest, especially with the sprite he has brought. He believes Mr. Ma is a brat full of envy. The receptionist believes that only women compete in the Flower King event, so it's very questioning as to how a man like him can compete for the crown. The sprite takes Mr. Ma's hand and Mr. Ma says he wants to get things off to a good start since he believes in himself. He wants it to be happy, which is why Gao Peng needs to evolve it in order to win the tournament. Gao Peng reassures him and tells him to leave it to him. He tells him that the costs are quadruple the amount, and the receptionist delivers the gadget where he must swipe his card to make the payment. Gao Peng hands the material list to the receptionist and instructs her to bring over the materials listed. The receptionist agrees and adds that since these are standard supplies, she will go get them right away. She gathers the items as he instructs both of them to wait outside while he works. Gao Peng does something and pulls up an injection-like device, smiling maliciously and telling the spirit to relax, that it would only hurt for a little while, and that he need not be terrified. Mr. Ma and the receptionist observed Gao Peng from behind the door. Mr. Ma then tries to stop Gao Peng, but the receptionist pulls him back and advises him to stay calm for the sake of his spirit. After a minute, Gao Peng permits them to enter, and they can see that the sprite has advanced to level 4. It's an outstanding grade, and everyone is healthy and happy. It turned out to be extremely nice. Mr. Ma then praises Gao Peng and hugs him, to which Gao Peng responds that he does not want to be held like that. He hugs him with great joy. A monster pet was resting on the ground, and it was accompanied by a very gorgeous girl who was disappointed that she had failed to train the monster yet again. They claim that even if they pass the test, they may not make it to the top of the class. However, after graduation, they will most likely have a 9-to-5 job, and who knows whether they will even be able to find work. Everyone agrees that things are going to be difficult right now. The girl is now enraged and ready to try again, no matter what. She pledges that she will find her classmate Gao Peng for this no matter what. In a mountainous place within the forest, there lives an animal that resembles a chipmunk, but with golden markings on his forehead and arms. He has excellent claws and a pretty small face. Within the woods, he feels someone hurl him out, and he is launched into the air before landing on the ground with a massive force. It appears that large, spider-like creatures, spider-like monsters, did this to him. There were massive spiders that flung him through the air. In the city, Gao Peng visits the material shop and places his normal order of 15 kilograms of yin cedar needles. While all this is happening in an important forest a bit far away from the main city, Gao Peng is out shopping for materials and food for his familiars from the shop he frequents. The owner informs him that they are virtually out of stock and only have 5 kilograms remaining. He believes that these needles should never run out because they are available on the outskirts of the city. The shopkeeper informs him that a swarm of spiders appeared out of nowhere and devoured all of the attribute plants in that territory. And now that the land has been shut by the military, he learns that the other creatures dwelling in the forest have become food for them. Following this talk, the owner advises Mr. Gao to leave since he has some clients to attend to, and if there is anything more, he can just look around. Gao Peng believes that this is the first collaboration between the academy and the military, and the second is the security business that came up at his door. The rapid arrival of an unknown spider species has emerged. He believes that something major is about to happen. During all of this, Liu Shenlin contacts Gao Peng and inquires about the vicious gray devil spiders that live in the Black Ember Forest. He discovers that they are nasty gray devil spiders. After that, he arrives at the Blue Shield Protection Company building, where Mr. Liu rushes to him and informs him of an urgent problem. So, to provide him with information, he informs him that these spiders have attacked many resource locations, prompting the government to summon several protection firms as well as commercial organizations to do a study on these spiders and their habitats. He informs him that their firm has also accepted this duty, and that they are going to go live in 3 days, and that they would appreciate it if he could take care of certain devil mantises before they begin their mission. Gao Peng wants to see how the scenario plays out first, and Mr. Liu hopes he can give his all since it is critical to the firm. It is partly due to the fact that monsters have evolved significantly in recent years. Mr. Liu goes on to describe how monster development has been disturbing the government, and how they have realized they cannot battle it alone. They get to the location where they've housed the mantises. Mr. Liu says they will provide enough helpers to support him as long as the results are good. Gao Peng promised the management that he would not let him down. He goes to the chamber with the mantises and stares at them. Manager Liu stares at Gao Peng through the glass, and a person behind him wonders what is going on. To which he responds that Gao Peng is simply looking around and touching things as if he is shopping or something. He's a little concerned because Gao Peng barely looks 20 and wonders whether he can really do it. Mr. Liu becomes enraged when he hears his staff say such things. He advises him to stop talking if he doesn't have anything decent to say. Mr. Liu believes that his entire career is dependent on Gao Peng, and he hopes that Gao Peng proves to be as talented as his uncle claims. Gao Peng now notices that there are 10 mantises that are the largest in size. He tells them that he wants the first 8 mantises from the first row, the 4th mantis from the 4th row, and the 7th mantis from the 4th and 7th mantis. He continues to give a list, and he asks them to prepare a laboratory of 10 sets of primary-level insect enhancers for wood attributes. Crystal nuclei star steel powder with perilla leaf powder. Perilla flower leaf. Hearing this, Mr. Liu rushes to prepare the material according to Gao Peng, and within 10 minutes, he has exactly picked 10 of the best devil mantises in the firm from hundreds of familiars. Mr. Liu realizes that at this speed and accuracy, he is definitely an intermediate-level monster breeder, and he's no way slower than those newly promoted advanced-level monster breeders. He is very happy and satisfied with Gao Peng's work, and a terrifying thing about Gao Peng is that he's not even 20 years old, but he's still extremely talented with the work he's doing. Soon the workers shift all the materials he has demanded and present them to him. Mr. Liu is seen praising Gao Peng, and they learn that the mantis has developed into a Commander Tier 4 winged jade devil mantis, with evolution to perfection. He believes that Gao Peng is truly something as if he is a treasure. Gao Peng now has a stopwatch, and it starts with Dazi sprinting. Gao Peng is there with Daji, and he is testing how fast Dazi has become through a short sprint. After some 7 seconds, he gets to know that Daji is 0.4 seconds faster than the last time. He is very happy about Daji and treats him to his favorite mealworm, which Daji also enjoys. There are people laughing at him while he was practicing with Daji, and some students made fun of him, claiming that Gao Peng was fooling around here during his training. Gao Peng then realizes, as he takes a look at the actions of the instructors, that the instructors are only good to the students who are hard-working, but have no intention of giving any instructions to the bad ones. He thinks this while he is looking at the instructor who is having a conversation with another good student. While he is busy in his thoughts, a girl from behind calls him. She is tall, she has hairs that come up to her brows making them fringe. She praises him for having trained his familiar really well and introduces herself as his classmate, Mu Tieying. The charming guy is shocked that she is so tall. If she were a boy, that would make her appear extremely macho, and he thanks her for the praise. After that, the pretty-haired girl asks him to perform in a group with him. Gao Peng asks why he should group up with her. She informs him that other students are not capable enough and that points will be granted based on group performance. On the other hand, she feels that Gao Peng is a wonderful partner and so wishes to group up with him. Gao Peng asks about her familiarity when she is a little uncomfortable and puts her fingers into her mouth and takes out a lotus seed from her mouth. She places him on the ground and it transforms into a rhino-like creature, which she calls her lotus seed. Gao Peng and Dazi are both astounded by the size of the rhino, and they decide to form a group. However, before they do, the girl informs him that Lotus Seed is really very timid. She used to make way for monsters who were dozens of times smaller than her, but she is more fit to be a defender now. Gao Peng believes that teaming up with her won't be too difficult because 2 of them are at perfect grades, and the rhinoceros is one of them. DayZ is evolving towards a poison-type attack familiar, so having a defender familiar with the group would be ideal. There are quite familiar monsters here, but 99% of them are normal monsters. The pretty tall girl believes it is impossible, and begins to depart after realizing that Gao Peng is taking too long and is hesitant to accept her offer. As she was walking away, Gao Peng called her from behind and said that she had accepted their request to work together. He also said that being kind wasn't an issue and that she could still instruct her later. He acknowledges that conversing with such slackers is draining, but as long as they are doing it, it's okay. When she sees Gao Peng accept her offer, she is overjoyed and gives him a firm handshake. Everyone is gathered in the wide area that runs around the edge of the Black Ember Forest, which is encircled by enormous spiders. Mr. Liu is shown talking to a very lovely woman and stating that these gray devil spiders are terrified of fire based on the most recent information. This time, Captain Song turns out to be the attractive woman he was speaking with before, but the spiders are unaware that their squad specializes in fire attributes. She is quite certain that the devil mantis is a forest killer and will finish the assignment first, as seen by her extremely pleased grin. Monster breeders from private organizations talk among themselves about the possibility that they will fight for the mission rewards on that particular day, which will drain their energy before the mission is completed. According to Captain Song, the manager conveys that there is no rush and that everything should be seen in due time. Since there is no opposition and they claim that they should first offer fire suppression, the army leader declares that the machine should start firing. Everyone focuses on the direction at 3 o'clock and they have begun shooting. When the missile tank arrives and begins firing through the flames, do spiders attempt to retaliate? Mr. Liu believes that they still have the ability to expose their flesh and attempt to frighten them despite all of the fire, which you can describe as a profound adoration. Mr. Liu is aware that the purpose of these fire formations is not only to frighten people, but also to weaken the monsters, which would greatly benefit the government. Because of the school's lack of seriousness, Captain Song is quite upset and very serious. She yells at Liu that they have 8 commander-tiered familiars, but the other organizations have only sent 3 or 4. He tells them that everyone is always hiding something or the other, and it is just that Mr. Liu was very honest and had shown his cards before anything even started. All of a sudden, a giant creature that resembles a yeti appears in between the forests, distracting everyone and making them curious about the sound. When the yeti monster becomes furious, it storms across the forest, causing fright and flight. An eagle monster appears out of nowhere and engages in combat with the yeti creature. The locals there call it the Golden Deity, who is the most powerful protector in the military area, and they are glad that the Golden Deity has kept them safe. Feeling dejected, the yeti turns away and departs after glancing at the Golden Deity. People believed they were going to perish, but the military chief told the monster breeders to hurry up and assemble. The chief, who is annoyed by the monster breeders, is approached by a blue-headed man wearing black sunglasses. He thinks they can handle this on their own, but the blue-headed lamb tells him that they had to take this action to create monster breeders with themselves, since the world altered in an unanticipated violent way. Therefore, it was necessary to involve non-governmental organizations at this time. The non-governmental organizations' monster leaders look for spider monsters in the forest, with their monster pets with torchlights. A member of the Captain Song's team approaches her and informs her that their team is wasting their energy since there are too many spider monsters, despite the fact that their families can kill them in a single hit. In order to maintain the formation and advance it, they rearrange the familiars' formations, placing the defense familiars in the front, the support familiars in the middle, and the offense familiars last. Spiders are seen approaching them, and the thorny flower demon is told to use his thorny armor. Captain Song to send the fire, and the hamster, who looks like a creature, spits fire out of his mouth. Captain Song's team realizes that they have defeated 3 spiders in a short period of time with less energy. They hear a noise and move in that direction, which indicates that even though the monsters are in the same configuration, they recognize that the spider monster has to be fought because it has little power and is simply used to reduce springs. Everyone thinks they will prevail if the monster doesn't attack at all. Mr. Liu tells the attackers to target its eyes while the others go for its legs, ensuring that if everyone trusts him, the pay will be distributed fairly. When the fighters hear this, they begin working the attack in the same manner as they ordered, increasing the attack's visibility. When the broodmother begins acting strangely, Captain Song notices that the crystal film that shields the mother's eyes is now down and feels quite uneasy about it. They all quickly come to understand that the broodmother was not genuinely weak, but rather that she was going through an evolutionary process, and as a result, everyone now experiences physical and auditory suffering due to the emissions from the broodmother's body. The soldiers and other officers were discussing how late it was and why no one had returned when they noticed that someone was approaching. They were all afraid of who it might be, so the army chief and the soldiers ordered them to take their places and get ready for battle. Mr. Liu, who is on the mantle, yells that it's him and that they shouldn't fire on him. The army rushes to him as he hits the ground and inquires as to why they are returning alone and what has become of the others. Coughing, he pauses to inquire as to whether the authorities sent them there with the intention of killing them. Additionally, he claims that a female spider with less combat prowess had developed into the Lord tier there. He is asked to calm down and explain the issue to the army head. He informs them that during their exploration of the cave, they came upon an evolving female spider. It was enormous, and all they could do was watch as their fellows were killed. They even used their apex familiars to finish their tasks, but they were unable to locate them. Furthermore, he had doubts about the number of those who would survive. He is currently being questioned by the army personnel if these were the findings of their laboratory study. As they were discussing this issue, they noticed that another person had returned from the jungle with his head down and hands on his chest. If the Spider King had followed them there, the army leader inquiries. After leaving the area, the man responds that he is unaware of it because they took separate ways to get away. They learn that Lao Li has returned as well. Lao Li apologizes profusely for not being able to defend Da Li and Ah Ling. They talk among themselves about how they would have discovered the Spider King sooner, strengthened it, and trained it if they had only known that it was changing into a Lord-tier monster. However, they realize that it is worthless and that they no longer need to be concerned about it because the Spider King's development has failed. Gao Peng and Dazi are together on the training pitch. Dazi is being trained by Gao Peng. While he was teaching him, a boy was there with his dog and yelling at the dog to see Dazi's obedience. As he strokes Dazi's head, he reflects and understands that he must transform both Dazi and Dumby into the Lord tier as soon as possible, because doing so would increase the likelihood of hunting successfully in the wild. He would benefit a lot by turning them both into the Lord tier as his reputation would become well known as a monster breeder. Additionally, he would be able to finish Yang Jin's advanced monster breeder task by then, and he will undoubtedly continue to get stronger as long as he follows that path. He is aware that level 14 has already been successfully conquered by Dumby. Dazi has not completed all of his training yet has reached level 13. He gets a call from his classmate Mu Tieying, who is holding a book. Gao Peng believes that since they have chosen to work together as a team, they should be adequately prepared. Additionally, he would be able to come up with a plan using this book. He studies the book Mu Tieying delivers. Gao Peng reads it, which contains information about the defense familiars. The book mentions how iron-like will is much more important than physical defense, and also many other important facts. He gives her a pat on the shoulders, thinking of how earnestly and how hard she had been working. Just then, the loudspeakers announce and call for all the students to gather in front of the stage. A group of names of disqualified students is called out by the instructor. When the names of those who qualified and those who were rejected are announced, everyone asks them how they were able to qualify and how they were disqualified, claiming that this was unfair to them. The instructors are expressing that they have been evaluating their performance over the last several weeks, and that it is not up to the level that would have qualified them for it. Using his phone, the teacher dials Xi Jiangyi's name and inquiries as to whether he enjoyed playing. He recalls being always occupied with his phone. The instructor then summons Hula Tang, whom she used to snooze every day. She covers her eyes in embarrassment, and the instructor is very strict, telling them that they can do anything they want starting tomorrow, including sleeping in class or skipping even the most basic training, because there is no point or reason to continue. The actual struggle is the second portion of the training. They would not only have mishaps, but even harm their loved ones if they were forced to continue training with this carefree attitude. Everyone is taken aback as they learn that the second step will involve actual combat. A dispute breaks out between two pupils on how powerful their familiars are, and how they would undoubtedly destroy one another's familiars. Everyone can see them amid this chaos. They begin to quarrel about the yellow-tailed scorpion, claiming it is only a common one and not particularly powerful. When the instructor says that each group must consist of 5 persons, and that their practical instruction will begin shortly, they instantly cease arguing. When they hear this, they both rush to stand next to Gao Peng and tell others to pick someone else because they are already in the same group as Gao Peng. The two individuals who had just been arguing over their monster pets were now praising Gao Peng for wanting to be in a group with him for a very long time. Arriving at Gao Peng's group, the instructor identifies himself as Zhang Renbai. After stating that he is the group's instructor for practical instruction, he asks if there are any volunteers who would like to come up first. They are shown a variety of monsters by their tutor, and they must select one to fight them. When the two men who had previously been fighting saw these creatures, they became terrified and began to wonder if they could ever alter them. When they hear this, the teacher shows them another one, a level 10 hairless blood hyena with an outstanding grade. He may not appear to be hurt, but because it is of high quality, it is superior to the steel-bristled boar and, to top it off, possesses poison resistance. It hurts too. This blood hyena is on Gao Peng's mind. Gao Peng accepts the challenge of volunteering and reporting to the instructor. He decides on the steel spiny boar that their teacher initially showed to them. The boar is anxious, enraged, and furious. A fight breaks out between Dazi and the boar. Gao Peng observes that Dazi is at a disadvantage during their fight, but he also sees that the boar is poisoned and just slightly hurt. Since Dazi has already administered the poison, which causes the boar to suffer severe damage, he believes he has complete control over the situation. The boar had a disadvantage, and it fell so quickly, which astounds everyone, including their own monster companions. The instructor informs them that the boar is poisoned since it has turned green. When the other gang members discover that Dazi is a toxic creature, they are horrified. In addition to congratulating Gao Peng on his centipede's successful completion of the training, the instructor advises him to reduce the venom's maximum dosage, as doing so will make it more difficult to counteract its potency throughout the training. Since Dazi has performed well, he gives him a reward and thanks his instructor. The instructor declares that the boar is still capable of fighting and asks if anyone else would like to go next. According to the man wearing a green vest, he believes his familiar can manage the second round of combat. The fat man and the green sweater man begin arguing about their master pets once more. At that point, the green sweater man orders his yellow-tailed scorpion king to attack the boar. He is so sure that his scorpion will win that, just as he believes it will, it falls and turns out to be poisoned. He is told by Mu Tieying that his scorpion poisoned himself because not all of his familiars notice that his poisonous attacks are resistant to poison. Even though the poison of Dazi is still inside the boar's body, the fat guy begins to laugh because it's hilarious. However, while they are arguing, he notices that his monster dog pet rushes to the boar to fight him. The fatty tries to stop his pet but to no avail, while Mu Tieying has some questions for Gao Peng. The instructor sighs as he considers how difficult this group is to manage. Back at home, Gao Peng thinks it's adorable and really foolish of Dumby to expect that food would just show magically in front of the refrigerator when he opens it. When his phone rings, he realizes it's the Monster Hunting Association, and he assumes it's about the Yinshada needles he needs. When he answers, he learns that the order has been numbered and completed, and he is asked to inspect the items at the association before accepting them. He is now certain that his order has arrived, and he quickly leaves in his shoes to bring it because if it's out of stock, he would have to switch Dazi's evolution methods. He was being seen from a distance by three brothers. They were tracking the package from the warehouse association all the way to Gao Peng's house because they believed he was the one who had spent a lot of money on those Yinshada needles and that they were there to rob him. One of the three brothers is afraid and asks if it is really okay to go this far. They then stealthily enter his flat building at night and bicker with each other on the way up the stairs. When they arrive at his door and attempt to unlock it, Sister Tang, the lovely woman who lives next door to Gao Peng, asks them why they are there since it is already bedtime. The boys are afraid and want to conceal the fact that they are here to steal it, so they offer the excuse that it is too dark in the hallway and they can't see the door. As Sister Tang closes her door, one of the brothers holds the door open and asks if it would be possible for them to get a drink because they are thirsty. They all smirk and exchange a very fishy look as Sister Tang invites them inside their home. As soon as they go inside, one of them shuts the door and responds that he doesn't want to disturb any neighbors. Sister Tang tells them that even if she were disco dancing at home, her neighbors wouldn't be able to hear since her walls are constructed of specialized soundproofing material. When the three brothers notice her monster lizard pet behind her, they become frightened and tremble. One of them pulls out a huge knife and tries to attack Sister Tang, but she has special powers that come from her hands, so she hits his hand and throws the knife on the ground. The other brothers are terrified, and that's when the thief brother throws his monster pet, a tiny one. The three brothers had a venomous porcupine that they threw, and the lizard ate it. They fight with Sister Tang, and the three brothers pull out a bullet rat monster. They believe they are winning, but they are now seeing Sister Tang's true colors. Sister Tang fights with them and ties them in a rope. She later calls Lao Qi and asks him to send some people to her place because she has 3 volunteers ready for them, and he will protect the border until the end. At school, the group gathers again where they see a water bear for the first time, which has a very special characteristic called cryptobiosis. This means that the water bear's metabolic rate will fall to extremely low levels, and Gao Peng believes that in order to contemplate acquiring a third familiar, he should aim to secure a contract with a water bear. Because they are resilient and have been known to survive in outer space, and even after a cataclysm, the resilience of the life force rises to another level where they have a variety of rare attributes. Despite the fact that this type of familiar has a strong self-protective mechanism, it does not cooperate with Dazi and Dumby, so he decides to forget it. Mu Taing's pet monster is now fighting with the boar. Her pet monster did an excellent job of fighting, but she became very enthusiastic and was inching closer to where they were fighting. This is not safe because she might hurt herself during the fight while she is nearby. Thus, the instructor tells her to calm down and return while such a massive familiar is battling. At that moment, Gao Peng receives a call from manager Liu, who asked him whether he was free today. Gao Peng believes it's a little flattering because Mr. Liu invited him out wherever he wanted to see his other friends. He reflects on how much loss the company experienced during the last forest tragedy, and how hard they are working to win over the skilled master breeder. After thinking a lot, he informs Mr. Liu that they should meet outside the school gate after his courses have ended. Mr. Liu arrives at the school gate. In his skull, he has his daughter, who attends the same school. She kept a small cat as her monster pet. Mr. Liu asks if he could glance at the familiar. He looks back and notices a cat familiar, which is an unusual sight. It has the monster trait of wood and a vulnerability to water. However, he assures his daughter that he would be available on weekends and that she may find him there. During this talk, Mr. Liu leaves his daughter off at home and informs us that he needs to do something with Gao Peng. Assuming an arrangement has been accessed, his daughter departs. Gao Peng believes that if this was a planned gathering for him to see his friends, he would not send his daughter home. He feels things are becoming crazier by the minute. And out of curiosity, he asks Mr. Liu about his pals, but Mr. Liu keeps it a secret, telling him that he will find out when they reach their destination. They arrive at a magnificent location that has been furnished with a landscape garden. Gao Peng glances around and concludes that the buddies Mr. Liu is talking about are not as easy as he believes. They enter a large room that already includes 5 individuals, excluding them both. Mr. Liu brings Gao Peng to Captain Song and Captain Jiang Gu. Looking at Gao Peng, Captain Jiang Gu comments that he did not anticipate a youngster like Gao Peng to be acquired here. Everyone in the room represented the Monster Hunter squad. Everyone staring at Gao Peng made him feel quite uncomfortable. While they were going to settle down, Captain Jiang Gu inquired about Gao Peng's health. Captain Song stops and urges him to stop scaring Gao Peng because she doesn't want to destroy her image by harassing a pupil. To calm the situation, Mr. Liu tells them that it was his fault for not informing Gao Peng about the Monster Hunter team's existence. Captain Jiang Gu invites Gao Peng to join him for a drink and mentions that he wants to counsel him on something. The others invite him to join them, but it turns out they are only there to learn from Gao Peng. He detects rage in their remarks, and it is clear to him that this is not an ordinary lunch. With all his thoughts, Mr. Liu hands him a drink that appears dubious. Mr. Jiang Gu lays down his chopsticks and says he wants to be honest with Gao Peng. He compliments Gao Peng on his exceptional abilities and wonders if he's as excellent as everyone says. Gao Peng informs him that if they want his assistance, they may contact their firm, but Captain Gu disputes this, claiming that if he is friends with Mr. Liu, he is also friends with him, and friends are never distant. They believe Gao Peng is unsophisticated, while Captain Song asks that Gao Peng look at some familiars she possesses. He was now certain that they were not just looking for a meal, but also to have him look at familiars and assist them. After a lot of thought, he attempts to politely refuse their offer, claiming that his talents are just inadequate, and that he will be unable to endure the duties and even mishaps. With this, Mr. Liu offers to send Gao Peng back, but he has already ordered a cab. Everyone was unhappy with him when he departed, but they tried to ignore it because he was a child. Mr. Liu becomes aware that everyone is dissatisfied and that he has angered both parties. The others go back to eat, and Mr. Jiang Gu shows up. He says that since he has helped in souring Gao Peng's relationship with other groups, the debt he had from the Dark Ember Forest is now repaid. Mr. Liu says that since they are friends, they should continue helping each other out. Captain Jiang Gu does not agree, and says they have no more karmic debt between them, since he has already repaid the debt he owes Liu. Captain Jiang Gu knows that Mr. Liu had tried to trick Gao Peng, and does not want that to happen to him as well. After Gao Peng reaches home, Dazi glances at him switching on the television. He sees that the Blue Magic Monster Familiar Gene Enhancement Serum was discovered to have negative side effects, resulting in numerous malignant mutations in Japan. The United Dragons Group announced the recall of the enhancement serum and stated that anyone who purchased it may return it and receive a full refund minus the service charge. He discovers that the scientists are demonstrating how uncontrolled the enhancement is and how they want everyone to oppose it. Mr. Liu calls Gao Peng and apologizes, saying he should have warned him about them previously. While Mr. Liu was discussing how the captains had upset both of them, Gao Peng hung up the phone without letting him finish. He actually does not blame anyone for making him seem foolish, but he undoubtedly blames himself for not having enough strength, and for the time being, he can do nothing but act according to the rules. Meanwhile, on the news, they are announcing that the first Yangcheng City Dog King competence contest ended successfully yesterday, and the participants in the competition came from Yangcheng Rongcheng and Pengcheng. 21-year-old genius monster breeder Han Ning had won the championships as the first Yangcheng Dog King. As reported, Han Ning was still a college student. a junior at the Yangcheng Institute of Technology. Gao Peng realizes that in only 3 years, Han Ning had trained his familiar to reach the commander level and perfect grade, and must be one of the top monster trainers. However, he also knows that it will not take long for him to catch up. Over in the Fei Peng familiar studio, he has concocted a mixture of various materials and has also brought along Dumby. After putting it through a food processor and mixing it with some other chemicals, he hands it over to Dumby, telling him to drink this medicine. Just then, Zhao Yu, who had previously been told by Gao Peng to come over whenever she needs, walked into the studio with 2 of her friends. One of them is joking around saying that he must look quite old if he was around Zhao Yu's age. They bicker and tease each other along the way to the reception. At the reception, Xun Chen greets the guests and asks them if they have any appointments scheduled with them. The girls look around and ask if they really need an appointment considering the studio looks way too empty. Quan says that if they do not have an appointment set up, then she can contact her boss to set up a time. Zhao Yu remembers that her dad had told her that Uncle Gao's monster breeding abilities were extremely impressive and had even called Gao Peng the #1 genius in Chang'an. However, due to the extremely high fees, he just did not seem to have many customers. Suddenly, there is a loud scream and a roar that is heard from behind a closed door. The 2 girls are taken aback and their bodies feel weak and pained. Even the cat familiar that one of them is holding is terrified of the roar. It is so scary that they cannot even breathe. All of a sudden, the doors burst open. A monstrous purple-hued familiar with sickly translucent skin walks out of the smoke when the door opens. It is apparently a skull ghoul ape at level 16 having an epic grade. It had even received a special characteristic called a blood thread heart. Gao Peng is absolutely amazed and happy that Dumby has evolved successfully and immediately checks the special characteristics. The characteristic has primarily 2 effects. Firstly, it can consume a certain amount of blood threads in order to form a blood thread heart. When it possesses a blood thread heart, all aspects of the skill ghoul ape would strengthen. Secondly, if he consciously activates the blood thread heart, it will trigger heart resonance. Through this, he can control the beating of hearts. It is a very powerful special characteristic, and Gao Peng knows that this will boost his combat abilities a lot. However, it will not be convenient to take him out like that. Thus he walks out of the room and asks Quan to find something to cover Dumby up. Meanwhile, Quan is simply staring at him with a flabbergasted expression. It was absolutely shocking that he had managed to evolve yet another familiar in such a short time. Just then, Zhao Yu calls out his name and Gao Peng notices her. He remembers that she is Manager Lu's daughter, and that he had promised to take a look at her familiar once. He wonders if he had sent his daughter there to test him after Gao Peng had hung up on him last time on their call. Manager Lu really was a crafty, sly fox after all. However, Gao Peng notices that aside from the cat familiar of Zhao Yu, her friend's familiar looks much more interesting. It was like a jellyfish moving through the air as if it were the sea. Just then, Zhao Yu speaks up and says that she hopes he can have a look at her familiar. Gao Peng smiles and tells her to not call him uncle, and that he was not used to such formality since they were of the same age after all. Gao Peng had already realized at this point that Lu Zhao Yu did not know what a crafty fox her father was, and decided that he should not bully a young girl just because of her father's actions. He then tells them that as usual he will first charge them, and after they have paid, he will have a look at their familiar. Since it was an elite normal mint cat, according to his standard rates, it would be 60 credits. However, since she was Mr. Lu's daughter, he can ensure that the upgrading materials will be on him and free. She thanks him profusely on hearing that, but just then, he asks her where the cat has gone only to find that it is hiding in a corner, frightened by Dumby. Seeing Zhao Yu walking over, the cat makes an adorable face, jumps onto her lap, and starts touching her bosom. Both Gao Peng and her friends wonder just how perverted the cat is. Gao Peng then turns to one of them and asks her where she had bought the jellyfish. She is surprised that he is interested in this type of pet, and explains that it is not really a familiar, but just a little pet at best. She mostly used to take its help as a portable purse. Saying so, she puts her own purse into its mouth and it disappears immediately. The jellyfish is surprisingly able to store things inside the extra-dimensional space in its own body. She explains that the levitating jellyfish was originally a speciality of Pengcheng City. However, a wholesaler who had imported a bunch of them recently was selling them at Wook Square. Gao Peng has firmly decided that he will be using this type of familiar as the third one for his party. Thus he travels to Wook Square where 2 people are trying to sell the familiars, calling them the newest fashionable unique purse, a flying purse. The jellyfish are extremely cute, and the ones most attracted by the offer are girls. Most of the girls are asking their boyfriends and partners beside them to buy the familiars for them. Gao Peng also arrives and asks one of the sellers to show him the levitating jellyfish. The man simply hands him one of the. However, Gao Peng shakes his head and says that he wants to see all of them, and not just one, because he will be picking the one he prefers himself. The seller leads him inside a big building and shows him a lot of caged levitating jellyfish. He says that according to the materials, during the cataclysm, a group of jellyfish were infected and mutated by space power. Over the next few years, they settled and thrived in that area. Later, because the other monsters were preying on them, they had almost gone extinct. Gao Peng realizes that the species might even be the weakest space monster. The seller agrees, saying that although it is a space monster, other than floating in the air and opening a small extra-dimensional space inside its body, the levitating jellyfish is incapable of attacking, and if it was not pretty or looked distasteful, it would have already gone extinct long back. Gao Peng realizes that even being distasteful was a part of its luck, because it would have been devoured by the masses otherwise. Looking around, he finally finds a jellyfish that catches his interest and feels much different from the rest. The others are just floating around quietly, but that one seemed the most active. He asks the seller how much he will take for that specific fish. The seller smiles, saying he has a good eyes, and explains that that fish was a rare mutant breed and was a perfect grade levitating jellyfish kind with a speed mutation. Thus, he proposes selling it at 100 alliance credits. Gao Peng smiles and states that honesty is important in business, and calling it a jellyfish just because of a little mutation was just exaggeration. He says that he will give 50 alliance credits for the jellyfish. The seller immediately accepts it and says that since he sees a fellow businessman in Gao Peng, he will discount it for him. Gao Peng just wonders how shameless he is that he did not even hesitate, and realizes that the seller would earn something even if the jellyfish sold at 50. The seller tells him to let any friends know if they want to buy jellyfish, and that he will give them a discount if they are referred by him. Gao Peng smiles at the greedy nature, but does not regret, as he had gained a lot from this trip. His team of familiars would finally be complete with the addition of this jellyfish. Looking at the jellyfish as he brings him back home, he wonders if he should name it Silly. Back at home, he opens the door and Dazi excitedly gets up from the floor, eager to see Gao Peng. Meanwhile, Gao Peng introduces the jellyfish as the newest member of their family, absolutely shocking Dazi. Dazi becomes jealous and runs off into another room and slams the door in his face after cursing him out. Gao Peng wonders just when it had learnt to become so jealous. Gao Peng is now angry and cracks his knuckles, thinking of how he is going to discipline Dazi. He goes over and starts whispering through the door that he had bought Dazi, his favorite bread mealworms and also poison arrow worms, mealworms and silver leaves. Further, he had also posted a notice to pay a high price for an electric commander monster core crystal to help him level up. He had posted the price at 301 credit points. A whole extra credit point more than the average price is enough to feed a family for their entire lives. Daza, who had been hearing about these amazing snacks and had been getting tempted to come out the entire time, finally concedes. He opens the door with a salivating mouth as Gao Peng asks with a smile if he wants to eat. Dazi replies that he really does, but just then, Gao Peng raises the food packet high up and out of reach as he refuses to give it to Dazi. This is the punishment for slamming the door in Gao Peng's face. Dazi struggles to reach the packet, asking it to be given to him as he curses the living hell out of Gao Peng for being a meanie. Meanwhile, Dumby and Silly are staring at each other, curious on seeing a new kind of life. Gao Peng has just finished beating up Dazi and is walking back to the table thinking that he cannot go a day without beating Dazi, otherwise his attitude would soar to the skies. As of now, Gao Peng assumes that Silly's level is not high, so his mental strength is probably enough. Thus he wants to try establishing a blood contract when possible. Extending his hand towards the glass container in which Silly was kept, he feels his consciousness. He realizes that Silly's mental space is smaller and weaker than Dazi's was in the beginning. Not to mention, Silly had quite the emotional insecurities. If he makes the blood contract now, it will just feel like a suspicious uncle kidnapping a little kid. He realizes he will need to stay with Silly for a longer time to lower its guard and further develop their friendship. Thus he decides that he will bring Silly to his school the next day to enhance their relationship. The next day, everyone is simply weirded out on seeing Gao Peng. This is because he is now wearing Silly like a hat on his head. It also looks pretty ugly instead of looking cute since its tentacles are wrapped under his chin. He sees Mu Tieying and pulls a cold bottle of mineral water to offer her. She stammers out a refusal before asking just what was up with his hat. He tells her that it is not a hat, but a levitating jellyfish, a space familiar. Mu Tieying realizes that it really is so, and says she had heard about it having a timid personality. Ignoring the small talk, she asks him if he had seen the monster for battle training that day. He says yes, and turns towards a cage holding a purple metal scorpion inside. It seems the test that day will be a tough one. She asks him if he is going to be the first to challenge it today again. Just then, the people around started whispering and complaining that it looked like Gao Peng would take the extra points for the first win again that day. They cannot even do anything because Gao Peng truly was strong and had the highest win rate among them. Some of them were just happy to get some points by analyzing his moves. Hearing all this, Gao Peng simply speaks out loud and says that he will leave the opportunity to the other that day, since he should not always be the first to challenge the monster, and that will not be fair to the others too. They all are shocked by that, as most are timid to stand out and be the first ones to go. Suddenly, a short student wearing glasses speaks up that since Gao Peng is willing to give up the chance to get the first win, he would like to avail it. The monster he has tamed as his pet is a dragon chicken. Gao Peng knows that it is the only elite tier familiar amongst them other than Dazi, and it is level 11. But despite its grade being only normal, it is enough to test the abilities of the purple metal scorpion. Thinking so, he looks at Dazi wanting to tell him to pay attention to the fight, but notices that Dazi is busy salivating as he looks at a different small-sized familiar lying on the ground. Gao Peng is exasperated at his gluttony and asks just what the hell he is looking at. He hits Dazi's head and tells him to pay attention to the purple metal scorpion's attack patterns, since he will be going up to fight the scorpion next. The instructor signals the start of the match, and the scorpion rushes towards the chicken. Barely dodging an attack of the scorpion, the dragon chicken jumps into the air and bares its claws at the scorpion. However, the scorpion easily grabs the chicken's claws and pulls him in, stinging him with his tail. Seeing the precarious situation, the student feels worried. However, the instructor says that the purple metal scorpion is fortunately not venomous. Otherwise, one attack would have knocked the chicken out. He was actually lucky that the chicken dragon was tough enough. Only the sharp barb at the end of the scorpion's tail had managed to pierce through its flesh. The rest of the round tail segment was not hard enough to deal any greater damage. Just then, there is a red glint in the chicken's eyes as it delivers a powerful peck at the scorpion's body, piercing through its tough exoskeleton. While the student who is the chicken's master rejoices, saying that he will be winning, Gao Peng has other views and can see that the fight is not over yet. Although the chicken has pecked through the scorpion's skin, the scorpion has not given up and swings its limbs and hits the chicken's legs, gravely injuring it. However, if even that was not enough, the scorpion also hits it directly in the balls, leaving the poor chicken in tears as the audience grabs their crotches, feeling equivalent pain just from the sight of it. Before the scorpion can do any more damage, the instructor glares, and the white wolf monster of his, in turn, glares at the scorpion, leaving it scared and unable to proceed. Meanwhile, the chicken takes this chance to run off crying as he holds onto his cracked eggs. Seeing the chicken master running away after the chicken, the instructor sighs and turns towards the students. He says that he knew some of them had been unhappy lately because Gao Peng's purple-backed thunder centipede was always the first to challenge the new monsters. The students must have been thinking that the instructor was biased and was looking down on them. He asks them if they still have such thoughts. The others simply back off and stammer out, saying that they do not mind at all, and that the top students with good grades should of course go first. The instructor satisfactorily turns to Gao Peng, who smiles and sends forth his centipede. Inside the cage, Dazi and the scorpion stare each other down. Mu Tieying feels worried because the purple metal scorpion should not act this afraid with its skill set. He wonders if the scorpion has some ace up its sleeve. However, he has no choice but to just trust in Dazi and hope he will do well. The scorpion decides to take the initiative and attacks Dazi with its claw, which Dazi effortlessly dodges. However, that is not enough, and the scorpion uses his stinger to attack immediately after. But Dazi is unaffected by the stinger and immediately counterattacks with a sweep of his own tail, finally landing a slash on the scorpion that weakens it. To end things, Dazi wraps its body around the scorpion, incapacitating it, and thus securing victory. Mu Tieying is fascinated by Gao Peng's familiar, and also his faith in it, because even though Dazi had been in a dangerous spot for a moment there, Gao Peng had not been worried in the least. He smiles and bluffs that everything was within his expectations, but only he himself knows about how nervous he had been at those crucial moments. One of the instructing staff requests Gao Peng to call his familiar back, as they did not have many monsters that can be used as training opponents. Gao Peng is confused until he finally turns around and sees to his horror that the gluttonous bastard of a centipede was chewing on the scorpion happily like it was his meal. The audience see the vicious way in which Dazi was acting with the scorpion and wonder if it is not completely tamed yet, and whether they were safe or not. Gao Peng does not get mad and merely whistles to call for Dazi, who promptly jogs up to him. Gao Peng remarks how he keeps eating weird things and is worried he might get a stomachache. He asks if the nutritious and delicious mealworm is not good enough. The other students around him are spooked out by how he happily wipes the scorpion blood off of Dazi's face and call him arrogant. Mu Tieying hears all this and asks Gao Peng not to mind those idiots. However, Gao Peng is not feeling very generous at the moment. He speaks in a low but steady voice, loud enough for everyone to hear, that at the moment all of them were battling monsters that are held in cages protected by the instructor and the silver moon wolf, and thus have the heart to sympathize with the monsters. However, When they are out in the wilderness, they will not have such a luxury, and the monsters will not care about them at all. He firmly declares that they are here to learn how to fight and not to have a tea party. And anyone with that kind of half-hearted learning attitude should just drop out early. Before the disgruntled students can retaliate, their instructor steps in and remarks that Gao Peng had indeed spoken the truth. And since the atmosphere felt right, he had decided that it would be a good time to announce important news. He tells them that they are more or less done with basic training and can henceforth apply to the outfield training base. The duration of the training will be 1 week, and the instructor has already arranged it with the school to allow for the participating students' absence. The instructor also tells them to first discuss it with their parents when they return home and informs them of the 5 alliance credit fee. Some of them are very excited to hear that after so long they finally get to engage in a real battle, while a few others are worried and anxious as their basic training is still not up to par. Hearing that there would be an outfield training base, Gao Peng realized that the government was really not sparing any expenses on the training program. Some of the students, however, are a bit taken aback by the fee requirement and ask if they cannot attend the training for free. The instructor tells them that they can simply choose not to go, or they can look for a privately owned outfield training base. Students with more experience tell the others that privately owned training bases cost 20 whole credits for a mere week of training, and that is just the entrance fee. It has to be topped up later to use various equipment. The students who hear this feel a bit down and decide that they will have to just borrow some from their parents after all. The instructor sees their faces and gives them further information that other than paying on their own, there is another way. That is to sign a contract with the military where all their training fee will be covered by the Alliance military in exchange for the students having to serve in the military for 8 years, after which they can freely leave. In case the contractee manages to get into military school too, then the time they spend studying in military school will count towards the 8 years. As they hear this, Mu Tiang remarks that although 5 credits is not a big sum, it definitely was not a small one either, especially for the average family. Gao Peng calls the government smart because the students are not forced but given a choice to pay or serve in the military. But either way, in the end, it will be the government who benefits. The instructor then announces one last important fact: if they apply, then they will need to get death insurance as well. One of the students raises her hand and asks if she will die getting it. The instructor smiles and explains that if they sign up for death insurance, it does not mean that they will die, but if they continue to maintain that level of intelligence henceforth, then they probably will. He explains that a monster trainer cadet's college examinations are different from other examinations, so it is best that they all make the best out of this special training opportunity. As everyone is discussing future actions to take, Mu Tianying bumps fists with Gao Peng as they decide to go there together the next day. A bus carrying the students who decided to participate in the outfield training is speeding down a dirt path escorted by a jeep. The different students are busy doing their own things, mostly admiring the beauty of the mountains and the various flowers and families available in the wild. All of a sudden, the bus screeches and the students experience a jerk as they fail to keep their balance. The driver just smiles, looks back, and apologizes for not seeing a stone on the road and applying sudden brakes. He thinks that, unlike the others, Gao Peng is unaffected by this, but feels a bit annoyed that the old man was pulling such tricks because the students were being noisy. He remembers how he had gone to talk with Sister Tang that morning regarding his trip, but she was nowhere to be found. He had knocked on her door with no reply and had even tried calling her, but to no avail. He knows that she is not so weak that anything serious will have happened to her, so he guesses it might be related to the secret that she could not tell him about. Suddenly the bus jerks to a stop again, and this time the force is large enough to even disorient Gao Peng. When the students start cursing the driver again, he sincerely tells them that he is sorry, and it was not deliberate this time. Looking forward, they realize that they have finally reached the outfield training base. All they can see are huge mountains, but in the V-shaped valley formed between 2 small peaks lay the base. After walking out, they are lined up and stand close to each other. An army lieutenant informs them that the valley behind him is their outfield training base, where every inch of the valley has been swept clean. Thus, other than normal and elite tier monsters, there will be no traces of any commander tier monsters. Further, the ID watches that they have issued the students have GPS and emergency rescue facilities installed. The mission of the participants would be to survive inside for a week. There is no backing out once this training begins, otherwise it will be considered as forfeiting the entire training. One of the students asks if there are fixed supply points inside the training base. The lieutenant says that there are a few safe houses in the valley which are made out of a special metal, and only commander tier and higher monsters would be able to break through the safe house, and there will also be a certain amount of food in each safe house. Thus, it will not be entirely impossible for the inexperienced students to survive in the valley for 7 days, and will solely depend on how they choose to live. Once it is time, the gates are opened, and they all step in through it, going into the wilderness. The instructors shout through loud microphones and tell them to hurry up and not to worry because even if they get eaten by monsters, the soldiers will be able to find them using the GPS and the watch. What would even be left of them if they were found after being eaten? Sigh. While everyone rushes to head deeper into the forest, Gao Peng is staring at a bird on the branch of a tree when Mu Tianying approaches him to ask what he is up to. He looks up and points to the sparrow. Gao Peng explains that it is a type of sparrow that usually flocks towards wet habitats, like a nearby body of water, and it is extremely sensitive to the presence of rain. These sparrows usually fly to areas experiencing rain, hence are named rain sparrows. Mu Tianying recalls that the weather forecast towers in most cities would raise rain sparrows. They have very weak offensive capabilities, but they are very fast. Suddenly the sparrow looks up towards the sky and flies away. Gao Peng is lost in thought while remarking that one really should go outdoors more often, because the wilderness, in contrast to the dull city, was a thriving environment and practically a treasure trove of monsters. Mu Tianying is impressed that while other people were simply rushing into the valley to find shelter, Gao Peng was observing the scenery. She realizes that people's states of mind really do differ a lot. Gao Peng looks back with a smile and shakes his head, saying that he was just waiting here for the people over there to go first, so the crowd clears. They chuckle together and then head out. However, a thought still lingers in Gao Peng's mind. It is his belief that he had seen a figure by the trees. Ignoring that, the first day passes fast as Gao Peng and Mu Tianying spend time together exploring the wilderness near the entrance and finding various interesting familiar species. Suddenly she spots a metal hut camouflage in green at a distance. They assume it must be a safe house and thus head towards it. There were not many beds in the safe house, which essentially meant that the instructors did not want to flock them together in groups. Gao Peng explains that there are no commander-tier monsters within the valley, and less than 5% of all the monsters there are elite tier. If students were allowed to even flock together, that would defeat the purpose of training itself. Observing things a bit more closely, he notices that each bed has 5 boxes of compressed biscuits and 10 bottles of mineral water. With careful rationing, the food and water given would definitely last a person for an entire week. This meant that the military had even taken the student's skill set into account. If they need to fight monsters and search for food at the same time, there would definitely be casualties. Turning back, Gao Peng is surprised to see Mu Tianying in a futuristic, cool-looking high-tech bodysuit, asking him if he was not going to change into them. Looking at his confusion, she explains that there are still some small mosquito species that are quite poisonous in the jungle, and being bitten by them will feel horrible. Gao Peng awkwardly smiles, looking at the suit again, and says that he is fine and he will just put on some medicinal herbs. Trying to divert the topic, he says that they should take a look around the area first. It would be best if they could hunt something down, since he does not want to eat only compressed biscuits for a week. Now that they have a safe house, they can use the lotus seed's original body size to clear the way, and whenever any problems arose, they could just return to the safe house to take refuge. She seems fascinated that he has thought so far ahead and eagerly follows him as they go out to hunt. He says that they will first search for a water source, as the area around it can be used as a natural hunting ground. Mu Tianying agrees, but soon complains that the fragrance of the flowers and the vegetation is just too thick. Not to mention it also carries a hint of the smell of decaying leaves, making her dizzy. She is about to lean into a tree for support, when Gao Peng grabs her hand and tells her to quietly tell Lotus Seed to ram into the nearby tree with as much power as possible. Although she does not notice anything special about the tree, she trusts Gao Peng's judgment and orders Lotus Seed to carry out the task. As if rams into the tree with full force, a tiny snake that had been camouflaged on a branch is revealed. It falls to the ground with a thud, surprising Mu Tianying, who wonders just what kind of a monster it was for it to have been able to camouflage so well. Gao Peng explains that it is a green tree snake is a green snake that can turn into a branch. The flesh of this type of snake contains trace amounts of poison that monsters can eat but humans cannot. However, Gao Peng, who had established a blood contract with Dazi, could transfer any harm that happened to him to Dazi. But since it was poison resistant, it would not be harmed either. Thus, theoretically, it should be fine for him to eat the snake because this meant that he had a form of poison resistance. Just then, he thinks he heard something jumping from a branch, but before he can check, Mu Tianying calls out to him, asking him to come over. He dismisses his thoughts and heads over while one of the green snakes, who had actually been hiding the entire time, escapes narrowly. Arriving near Mu Tianying, Gao Peng realizes she had found a water source. The water looked clear, and she identified it as running water with no foul smell, thus making it suitable for use. Gao Peng is pleased and says that as long as they have a clean water source, the probability of them surviving through the week will greatly increase. Just then, a small blue frog who is submerged in water spits at Gao Peng's legs. He is irked by the foul smell that emanates from the area on his trousers where the frog had spit. Analyzing the frog's characteristics, he comes to know that it is a green-skinned frog, of level 2 and of normal grade. Apparently, it likes spitting saliva at other animals but hates it when others spit at it. Gao Peng wondered just what kind of a crazy frog he had encountered since it liked spitting only when it was the one doing it. That aside, what other animal would even attempt something so pointless as spitting back in retaliation? Just when Gao Peng is trying to ignore the frog and is starting to think about how to cleanse the pond of water, the frog spits at him once more with almost a smile-like expression on its face. Pissed off at its attitude, Gao Peng spits back on the toad, feeling very proud of himself. He thinks he had given the toad a chance, but it did not cherish it. However, at that moment the toad starts crying and croaking, kicking up a fuss. Suddenly there is not just one, but many different croaks of hundreds of frogs in the pond. Mu Tieying turns to Gao Peng as she expresses her surprise at the sheer number of toads in there. However, Gao Peng does not have a moment to lose and immediately tells her to start running. He grabs her hand and rushes out of there before the toads can open their mouths and release their spits all at once. As they escape, Lotus Seed covers their rear due to his humongous body, and they finally make it to a safe distance away from the water. While they are out of breath and trying to lie down, she asks Gao Peng if they are safe. On receiving confirmation, she lets out a sigh of relief. She had never imagined a day would come when she would be scared of a group of frogs. Gao Peng tells her to never underestimate frogs. If there were only one or two, then there would be nothing to be afraid of, but there were at least 1,000 in that water body. After they grouped together, it would be hell for just about anyone who messed with them. After calming down a bit, they decide to calmly think and talk about their situation. To the north is a jungle, and behind it is the green-skinned frog's territory. To the west is the direction of the valley's main gate, where there are fewer trees and hardly any large or threatening creatures. To the south was a dense jungle where they had spotted tracks of large carnivorous monsters. The thick trees make it difficult for Lotus Seeds to move there. To the east, there was a small slope. Going up the slope led to a wide grassland that showed signs of grazing, meaning mostly herbivorous creatures lived there. That is all the information they could gather that day, so Mu Tieying asks what they should do now, and if they should expand their range and walk further. Gao Peng says that now they should simply head back and prepare dinner. Seeing his over-enthusiastic attitude about returning back to the safe house, she feels weirded out. But he continues to reason that they had already done enough exercise that day, and they would tire themselves out on the very first day if they were too nervous. Just when Mu Tieying tells him that they should probably head out and find something to eat in that case, he tells her that there is no need to do that. He holds up the green snake he had caught earlier and brings out condiments like mind clove, the golden-stranded nutmeg, and the blue-black grass. She is unable to decide whether to ask him where he gathered them from or where he had stored them. He laughs and says that they always need to be prepared since they have to survive in the wilderness. Just as they are discussing these, the Alliance team is currently monitoring all their activities through cameras inside a big control room. The atmosphere feels chaotic as the people rush around and announce matters like distress signals, discover safe houses and other dangers or information that they need to keep watch over for the sake of the students. While this is all happening, at one corner of the control room, a specific staff asks the one sitting behind the workstation whether they were spectating the potential candidate that Zhang Baron had mentioned. The person on the workstation says that it is indeed him, and that his familiar and facial features all match the description. One of the staff is criticizing him for running away from the green-skinned frogs and having the leisure of thinking of food while running, while a few others say that it might be counted as having a strong sense of survival. The main lieutenant who had instructed the students on their arrival at the base remarks that the staff there were thinking too simple-mindedly. He reminds them that Gao Peng is just a student who underwent a short duration of training. Whether it was the utilization of topography, the mastery of survival skills in the wilderness, or possessing the resolve to give up on something that he cannot achieve, his performance had already exceeded those of other teams. He tells the staff to keep a good eye on him. Meanwhile, Gao Peng and Mu Tieying have returned to the bunker only to realize that the bunker that they had found had gotten locked from the inside. Mu Tieying knocks loudly on the door, asking whoever is on the other side to kindly open up. However, a voice replies that the house is already full there, and those outside should go look for other safe houses. Mu Tieying discusses it with Gao Peng and tells him that no one might care about who was the first one to find the safe house in the wilderness, and they can only blame it on their own bad luck for running into such people. Gao Peng tries to ask the people inside if they can let the duo sleep on the floor at the very least. The people inside discuss and ask why they are even explaining anything to the ones outside and shout out that they should just find someplace else before sunset. Before Mu Tieying can get angry at them, Gao Peng tells her that it is not worth it. They will definitely get their just desserts from someone soon. Mu Tieying calms herself and decides to turn back, but just then she notices that Gao Peng has actually not moved from that spot at all. Instead, he has turned back and is now heading towards the house doors. She sees him putting on locks on the door from the outside and is surprised he even had locks on him in the first place. Seeing her confused, he explains that he had taken it from the safe house. He says that it had been lying next to the table and he had guessed that the instructor had wanted them to use it to reinforce the door in order to increase their safety. Thus, he had thought of putting it in his bag before they headed out, and turns out it came in good use after all. The military staff who are looking at their actions from the cameras laugh out loud, seeing that he had happily locked away the other participants inside. It was a really amusing trick that made them think that he was as clever as a monkey. The lieutenant who had instructed them at the beginning asks a superior about his views on Gao Peng. The superior, who has sharp eyes, says that he is stronger than the average student. However, the real show is yet to come. Night has fallen, and Gao Peng and Mu Tianyin are still walking along the road thinking of how to survive in the wilderness after sunset without any plan. There are monsters everywhere, and they think they should head in a specific direction and hope they can spot a safe house. Little do they know that danger is lurking around the corner, closer than they think. Even after walking for quite a while, they are unable to find a shelter, and Mu Tianyin thinks they will have no choice but to spend the night outdoors. Gao Peng adds that it would not be very safe to explore further, but they had not found any caves nearby either. He points to the top of a tree where the trunk is upright and its branches are around 3 to 4 meters above the ground. They might as well build a simple shelter on top of it. Mu Tianyin agrees, and with the help of lotus seed a tree is brought down, and using it and a few leaves, bushes, and grass gathered from here and there, they are successful in building a quick shelter. Mu Tianyin is amazed at the efficiency with which they were able to finish building it, and turns to Gao Peng to say something. However, he has already fallen fast asleep. She takes a look at their familiars, but both Dazi and Lotus Seed are sleeping soundly too. Making up her own mind to go to sleep early, she pulls out a blanket and goes to sleep just a bit away from Gao Peng. Unbeknownst to them, malicious eyes are staring at them, wondering how these two idiots could camp out in the wilderness without lighting a fire or arranging night shifts. They belong to a lady with black hair and red eyes. She thinks that she should teach them a lesson since she was already there. However, before she can do anything, she senses a presence heading her way at a very fast pace. As the jet-black animal pounces across the deep woods, its eyes glow bright red, leaving a trail of disturbed underbrush behind it. This is no ordinary creature. It's a dark shadow panther, its presence radiating an aura of menace. A creepy, red-eyed silhouette lurks behind a tree trunk, watching with interest as the panther approaches. The silhouette wonders whether Gao Peng will be able to fend off the panther's attack with his acquired skill set, considering the monster isn't exceptionally powerful. The panther emerges from the darkness, its growls growing louder as it approaches the tree where Gao Peng and Mu Tianyin are resting for the night. Lotus Seed, Mu Tianying's loyal pet, senses the danger and springs into action, its ears perked up and its eyes flashing with alarm. The pet's frantic howling pierces the night air, shattering Mu Tianying's deep slumber. Rubbing her eyes, still disoriented, Mu Tianyin questions Lotus Seed on what's happening, her voice laced with concern. Before she can get an answer, Gao Peng yells, alerting her to get off of the tree. Mu Tianyin doesn't hesitate, throwing aside her blanket and crashing onto Lotus Seed's back. The impact is jarring, and she stumbles, hitting her face against the pet's sturdy frame. Regaining her posture, she inquires with Gao Peng about the situation. He gestures toward the tree in front of them, his eyes locked onto the panther's glowing red eyes. Dazi, Gao Peng's pet, is already positioning itself for battle, its body low to the ground. Mu Tianying's gaze follows Gao Peng's, and her eyes widen as she takes in the panther's menacing silhouette. She exclaims in confusion, stating that the monster either should be a dark type or shadow type. She runs a search through her database, informing Gao Peng that the panther's strengths remain unknown. She doesn't forget to mention that the combat ability of such monsters is higher during the night. She proceeds to ask him whether they should fight or run. Gao Peng studies the monster intently, figuring that it is a normal grade, level 15 dark shadow panther. He suggests that turning their back on it will awaken the predatory instincts of the panther, which they certainly do not want. His words are cut short as the panther springs into action, its teeth bared and claws extended. The swift attack catches Gao Peng off guard, and he hastily calls out to Dazi to attack the panther. The pet responds instantly, electrifying the panther and paralyzing it. Seeing Dazi's attack, Gao Peng grins reassuringly, knowing their training hasn't gone to waste. Despite facing a beast higher than its level, Dazi handles the panther with ease. Dazi's pointed legs slice through the panther's body, leaving it wounded and reeling. The panther retreats, its eyes scanning the surroundings for an escape route. But before it can make a move, it senses a presence behind it. A presence that makes its blood run cold. A scaly green anaconda emerges from the shadows, its yellow eyes fixed intently on the panther. The panther shivers and tries to flee, but it's too late. The anaconda's jaws yawn open, and in one swift motion, it swallows the panther whole. Gao Peng, Mu Taiying, and their pets are startled, and they quickly make a run away from it, desperate to escape the deadly snake's notice. Their feet pound against the forest floor as they flee, the darkness of the woods seeming to grow thicker and more menacing with every step. The humongous green anaconda stares at the escaping Gao Peng and Mu Tian. However, instead of choosing to pursue them, it decides to turn around and aggressively bite at a branch of the tree, breaking it off. The mysterious lady who had been observing Gao Peng had jumped away from where the snake had attacked. She stares at it, glad that it was quite tactful, otherwise her cover would have been blown if they had fought. Deciding not to engage in it, she flits away, jumping from branch to branch. Meanwhile, the Hunter Corps have become alerted about the mutant giant jungle anaconda and have reported it to the lieutenant, asking if they should eliminate it. The superior hears of this, and before the lieutenant can reply, the superior, who is apparently the commander, tells them that there is no need to pay it any heed. It is of a gentle nature, and its offensive strength when initiating attacks is not strong. It will simply be another trial for the students. He has a resolute face as he declares that if they cannot even deal with a trial of this level, then they should just give up on going down this path while they still can. The lieutenant agrees and says that Commander Tan was right. However, he still orders the staff to have the Golden Condor team on standby for rescue. If someone presses the emergency rescue button, then they are to set off immediately. The next day, it is already morning when Mu Tian wakes up only to notice Gao Peng standing and looking at her. He tells her that it is time, and they should depart now. She is confused about where exactly he is planning to head, and he tells her that they should go and have a look at the campsite they had set up the previous night. After all, they really had left a lot of their items there since they had rushed away in a hurry. She is startled on hearing this and states that it might be dangerous as they do not know if the giant jungle anaconda might still be there. They also do not know any important information such as its weakness and attack patterns. All in all, going back there was quite a risky choice. Gao Peng smiles and says that it is precisely because they could not collect any useful information that they need to go back there. He tells her that the level of understanding towards monsters is also a skill set of a monster trainer, and such random pieces of information could even save one's life someday. The time they used to live in had changed. Earth was no longer a peaceful place, and the threat of death was promptly looming across humanity. One would only become weaker if they continued playing it safe. After saying his part, he turns around and starts walking off. She makes up her mind in an instant and tells him to wait up. She asks if he is thinking of riding Dazi out of any troublesome situations and emphasizes her importance too. Looking at the state of the trees in the path near their old campsite, Mu Tian comments that if they had not run fast enough, then they would have ended up worse than the trees. Mu Tianying informs Gao Peng that she will be searching in a different direction and walks off on her own. A shining crystal-like object stuck inside the destructed remains of a tree gains Gao Peng's attention. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that it is the wood space heart, a space attribute material. Wood space heart is a key ingredient for Silly's evolution, but Gao Peng has never heard of it being sold in markets. It was like such material had no existence. However, today Gao Peng discovers the reason behind the problem. Turns out it is actually the wood space heart stays hidden in certain types of tree that are similar to bottle trees. Gao Peng soon figures that the anaconda they encountered yesterday was able to grow so big because it had consumed a wooden space heart, a rare ingredient, and he also concludes that the anaconda was protecting its food, which is the reason why it did not chase after them. He yanks the material out of the tree trunk and decides to calculate chances in order to collect more wooden space hearts later on. But as of now, he is determined to take advantage of this given opportunity to find new special ingredients during the course of the field trip. On the third day, Gao Peng successfully discovers a small green crystal tree that shines like emeralds under the sunbeams. On the fourth day, he finds a small shimmering golden tree and asks his pet to bring his finding to him up from the rockland since it is away from his reach. On the fifth day, he locates purple crystals and enthusiastically harvests them for future utilization. The sixth day also goes by the same flow. And finally, on the seventh day, the captain announces to the gathered group of students that they have successfully passed the training and calls all of them outstanding peers. He also informs the students that the tentative dates for the next combined training in the valley have been decided, and also mentions that the students who have attended the previous training can attend the next one for free. He declared a holiday of 3 days, hoping that the students would have gained plenty of experience and knowledge from the training. Hearing the captain, all the students start jumping with excitement, making plans for their holidays. Gao Peng, on the other hand, takes his phone out to inform his sister Tang about the completion of the training and the holidays. However, stands astonished after reading the news about Lotus Swarm on his mobile screen. Everyone present in the Chang'an city center walking street is busy listening to news about the upcoming pandemic that may shake up the whole population. The news anchors report about the battle in the north and alerts declaring that everyone is now at the front line of the battle. However, currently, the Chang'an military troops have stopped the locust swarm outside of the front lines. Sitting on the sofa inside his flat, Gao Peng listens carefully to the news, which informs that according to the research carried out by the director Feng of the Chang'an Monster Breeder Association, these monsters called DS leaf locusts are extremely of fire, and using that weakness they have been successfully held them off for now. The news also mentions that the swarm is estimated to be around billions in number, each of them being at least 30 centimeters long. The situation doesn't sit right with Gao Peng as he begins to worry about it, when suddenly his phone rings. The screen flashes Director Feng, leading Gao Peng to immediately pick up the call. Gao Peng greets the director over the call with a smile as he receives a question from the other side, inquiring about his return from the training camp. Director Feng proceeds to tell him that the military has sent over a batch of the new type of voracious golden toads and wants them to promote their grades. So he invites Gao Peng to come over to the association the next day, assuring him about the paycheck. Hearing Director Feng, Gao Peng asks him whether the military wants to use the voracious golden toads to deal with the locust swarm. Listening to what Gao Peng said, the other two workers sitting inside Director Feng's cabin murmur in confusion, discussing how can Gao Peng know about such information. However, they shut up at once when Director Feng shifts his attention towards them, while warning the two with his sharp eyes. Shifting his attention back to the call with Gao Peng, he affirms his doubts and tells him that using firearms to exterminate the locusts is quite inefficient, so the military wants them to research ways to improve the grade of the voracious golden toads by using the law of nature. Hearing that, Gao Peng grins with a frown, calling it quite a plausible idea. Director Feng inquires about Gao Peng's interest in this paid partnership. He also lands a bait saying that the remuneration is negotiable, which catches Gao Peng's attention as he agrees, asking Director Feng if it is possible to change the remuneration to a commander-tier electric-type monster core crystal. Feng answers honestly, telling him that such activities are prohibited. However, he has connections in the military, so it shall not be a problem. Listening to this, Gao Peng enthusiastically promises to see him at the association the next day. In the next morning, Gao Peng enters the association, waiting in the ground hall when suddenly Director Feng gives him a call from behind and begins escorting him towards the lift. He informs Gao Peng that the military sent in 2 samples of the voracious golden toads that they shall see soon. The receptionists gossip about the young man in front of them, whom Director Feng himself came to greet, thus considering Gao Peng to be the son of some leader. Inside the lift, Gao Peng notices the eye bags underneath Director Feng's eyes and asks if he stayed awake the whole night, to which Feng nods in agreement and expresses his frustration, stating that despite staying awake most of the night in order to research the toads, he is unable to make heads or tails of them. When they reach the BIV floor, Gao Peng is left speechless by the vast space while Director Feng welcomes him to their workplace. He then takes Gao Peng near a small kennel that cages a voracious golden toad behind bars. Looking at the toad, Gao Peng notes that voracious golden toads evolve from horned frogs. They have terrifying jump abilities and are of earth attributes. An employee researcher calls Gao Peng, earning his attention. He provides him with fennel-scented grilled locust skewers and politely requests him to feed the toad, as this is the voracious golden toad's favorite dish. However, the employee researcher and Director Feng are left amused when Gao Peng picks up the skewers and stuffs the grilled locusts in his mouth as he begins praising the sauces used in making grilled skewers, while devouring the locusts as if it is a feast. The toad in the cage croaks angrily on seeing Gao Peng taking a bite out of the skewer. Gao Peng calmly chuckles and says he was just taste testing it before feeding it to him. Seeing the toad swallowing the entire skewer whole along with the metal rod, he is impressed. He turns to Director Feng and asks him which aspect of the toad they want to improve. He tells Gao Peng that the military wishes to improve its defense and also its ability to digest things. Improving offensive capabilities was not extremely important, but appreciated nevertheless. He takes Gao Peng over to have a look at the results of his research that had been ongoing recently. He had found that the voracious golden toad had a rather decent affinity for 2 attributes, namely earth and fire. He had extracted a bit of the toad's skin and combined it with various fire-attributed materials, and had found that its flesh has a high affinity with fire and orchid vines. The flesh had shown no signs of rejection when fire orchid vine extract was introduced to it. But fire orchid vines have a very gentle fire attribute, so they were not relying on that data as sufficiently accurate. Gao Peng's system has already told him that there is a path that uses fire orchid vines as a supporting ingredient. That path of evolution is also towards the fire attribute, and he would just have to modify the formula a bit. He suggests the director to approach this differently. The director asks if he has already come up with an idea in this short amount of time. Gao Peng says that they can view the voracious golden toad as the main food ingredient and the fire orchid vines as a seasoning. But the flavor of fire orchid vines is not strong enough, so it is hard for the flavor of the seasonings to permeate the toad. In such a situation, they can consider a different cooking approach, such as using a stronger ingredient or cooking it with more heat. Director Feng feels that there might be a lead in Gao Peng's words and tells his assistant to bring over the red-faced demon chilies they still had in the warehouse. While the assistant is skeptical, he still does as told. After the ingredients arrive, Gao Peng exclaims that the demon chilies look like they have been well preserved. Soon Director Feng starts making the evolution solution. On seeing the dark red color indicating strong properties, he asks his assistant to fetch him some more ingredients. And after a lot of work, it is finally done. However, when they inject it into the toad flesh, the flesh explodes, thus failing the mixture. The director asks his assistant to test the blood and find out why the evolution had failed. After a quick diagnosis, it is found that the reason for the toad exploding is that it absorbed too much of the fire element, and the explosion was a result of conflicting energies. There also seemed to be a lot of unmerged fire elements in the flesh and blood. The assistant tries to say that based on the results of previous experiments, there could have been a chance for success if they had simply adjusted the formula and the amount of materials used. In this case, if the energies are conflicting with one another, then it means that they did not merge with each other at all, which means that the experiment can be declared a total failure. The director says that it is still too early to decide whether this method was incorrect or not, and that they should do a few more experiments and collect more data. When the assistant tries to refute again, the director tells him to just bring another set of ingredients and not be stubborn. Even during the second and third experiments, the formula simply results in a failure. The other researchers in the room think that there is either something wrong with the formula or that what the assistant was trying to say was true. It is at this moment that Gao Peng steps in and tells the director that they have already tried so many ingredients that ended in failure. This prompts him to believe that using the devil chilies as the sole main ingredient is insufficient, and they should probably add another ingredient. While it is a bold idea, Gao Peng tells him that since he has believed in him once, it should be alright to believe in him one more time too. Director Feng wonders just what Gao Peng plans to use as the other main ingredient. Gao Peng smiles and states the name of black soft soil. It is an earth attribute soil material that has the properties of dampness and is of yin nature. He says that they can have the voracious golden toad consume it in order to protect its internal organs. After that, they can add in some sparrow saliva wood to the list of supporting ingredients for the devil chili. Wood feeds fire and fire creates earth. Director Feng understands and decides to give it a shot. After careful experimentation, they shockingly find out that the element has successfully assimilated into the flesh this time, and the amount is substantial. The director is absolutely pleased with the results they have achieved this time. Gao Peng states that they should probably proceed with the life testing. Since many of these ingredients must be consumed, they will not actually know the results till they can experiment on live subjects. Even though they have never cut off too much of the flesh, and they anesthetize it each time for hopes of full recovery, the toad itself looked very pitiful. Gao Peng decides it would be best to feed it some locust skewers later. As the live testing continues, the amount of smoke in the room also keeps increasing. As they had already figured out the correct amount of each ingredient, the rest would just be repetitive tasks of adding in the right ingredients at the right time. The director tells him that he will stay behind a while longer, as Gao Peng himself leaves to go get some fresh air. The demon chilies have a very pungent smell after all. He hoped he was acting natural enough for them not to have noticed that he already knew the formula based on the suggestions he had given them. The formula was actually being tested under Director Feng's name. Yet he knows he needs to be careful because it would be a pain if someone with ill intentions found out his secret. This is the first research experiment conducted on the voracious golden toad, so there would be no explanation as to why a normal high school student like him knew the formula before they had even started. Just then, red fumes emerge from inside the laboratory and a person rushes out coughing heavily. Gao Peng turns back and realizes that it has been a success. The staff believe that due to the fire attribute, the toad has gained dual attributes of fire and earth. Gao Peng shakes his head silently in disapproval. The fire attribute is indeed there in the toad, however it does not have dual attributes. In order to use it as soon as possible, it was the only method they could use. Meanwhile, at the front lines to the north of Chang'an City, the military has prepared itself for battle against the locust swarm. Intelligence arrives that the locusts have reached District A and they should get prepared for battle. Seeing them coming closer and closer, the one in charge on the field tells the tanks to immediately use the white phosphorus incendiary bombs. The bombs look effective, and the commander tells them to press on with the same rhythm. However, things are bound to never progress smoothly. Through binoculars, the locusts can be seen to be preparing their sandstorm attack once again. This was bad news for the military. The massive sandstorm generated by the locusts kicks up a dust cloud, and all the incendiary bombs are blown away with sheer wind force. Seeing this, the commander orders everyone to stop using incendiary bombs, as it would just be a waste. The soldiers, on hearing that they can no longer use incendiary bombs as it will not work on the locusts anymore, panic, wondering what they should do. Some strong-headed infantry amongst them decide to take up arms and shoot the bugs down, saying that they have a duty to protect the countless civilians behind them. Just then, the group of specially evolved fire attribute toads appear at the scene. The aura released by the toads, who now have the attribute of fire on them, terrifies the locusts, who panic. This helps in stopping the sandstorm, as the locusts rush around in disarray. One of the soldiers who is watching this sight asks his platoon leader just where these giant toads had appeared from. He warns them not to call them mere giant toads, as they had been specifically designed to fight the locusts. Seeing the locusts trying to regroup, the toads immediately start spitting fire from their mouth. In an instant, with every shot, hundreds of locusts are smoked and they all fall off. The toads pick them up from their ground with their tongue, enjoying a delicious treat of smoked locusts. The soldiers are grateful for the arrival of the magma toads, as their comrades will not have to risk their lives fighting those monsters any longer. They are thankful in their hearts to whichever kind soul had created the magma fire toads. Meanwhile, far off inside the city, in a garden right outside Gao Peng's flat, a group of old people are discussing about the monster trainer classes that are being conducted all over the country. They are making small talk about the involvement of their grandchildren in the special training programs. All of a sudden, a military jeep comes and stops right outside the gates of the flat. Out of it emerge dignified-looking military officials. The old lady in the garden wonders just who the people from the jeep might be looking for. Lao Han, a white-haired old man, speculates that they must be looking for Gao Peng from the 6th floor. He remembers a similar incident having happened a few days ago too. Speaking of Gao Peng, the topic turns to how an old lady had seen him bringing home a skeleton when she was walking her dog. Then Lao Han shakes his hands and says that there are no such things as ghosts, and that she must have seen them wrongly. Yet another old lady chips in and says that she had seen it too, and the skeleton's head had even been burning with a blue flame. Unable to reach a conclusion, they turn to Granny Chen, who lives right below Gao Peng, and ask her if she had ever seen such a creature before. She smiles sweetly and tells them that there is no such thing as a skeleton. It is merely Gao Peng's familiar. Although it looks a bit scary, it is the same as all the other familiars working to protect them and look after them. She passes a needle and a thread to her spider familiar, who threads it for her and returns it with a smile as gently as it can. Lao Han remarks that the spider looks really useful and asks why he had never heard her call its name. She gives a bittersweet smile and says that it does not have a name. Meanwhile, the people who had emerged from the jeep had already made their way up to the 6th floor where Gao Peng lived. The platoon leader hands over the commander-tier electric-type monster core crystal to him and explains that he had personally requested that he be sent here to carry out the delivery. He swiftly goes into an attention pose as he salutes Gao Peng, thanking him on behalf of all his comrades and offering him his highest respect and gratitude, especially the comrades who had died. Protecting the country is every soldier's duty, and they were ready to die without a second thought for the cause. However, he tells Gao Peng that he always worries about whether they have died a worthy death or not. After finishing all these formalities, the military leave. Gao Peng looks out his windows to see the military sitting back in the jeep. He lets out a deep sigh and thinks that he should try and participate in more of these kinds of experiments to help the front lines while keeping the system a secret. However, he also knows that the system only acts as a support, and in the end he could only rely on his own capabilities out there. The important thing here is to increase his own strength to protect himself while having more say in the experiments. Just as he is having all these stressful thoughts, Dazi comes over and gives him a hug in an attempt to comfort Gao Peng. He realizes this and feels warm inside as he hugs Dazi back. Just then, he is reminded that the main ingredient for Dazi's evolution had just arrived. He decides to help Dazi evolve that day and gets to work making a sickly purple soup. The soup truly looks like it could poison just about anything. It was something that felt unsafe to even touch. However, this very concoction was what he was planning to feed Dazi. Daza feels disturbed by the look of the soup, but he decides not to say anything and gulps it down after taking one whiff of its sickly aroma. The bowl falls to the floor, shattering as he lets go of it. Suddenly, lightning overflows through Dazi's body as he stands upright. However, contrary to how Dazi had expected to come out looking dashing from this outburst of lightning, he turns into a smoking lump of fried centipede. Concerned for him, Dumby poked his head. As if getting a sudden idea, he goes over to the fridge to grab his favorite grass and tries to feed it to Dazi, thinking he might feel better if he eats it. However, there is no reaction, and Gao Peng pats Dumby's shoulders, saying that they should probably let Dazi rest by himself for a while. With a confused expression, Dumby sits down and starts munching on the grass himself. Seeing the two clowns idly sitting there, he thinks it would be best to just let them be, and decides to focus on taking this opportunity to form the blood contract with Silly. He looks at Silly and calls for the jellyfish to come over. However, the jellyfish is stubborn and tries to laze around as it floats away whistling to itself. Gao Peng sighs and tells it that he has some delicious fruit juice for it. This is more than enough motivation for Silly to rush right over. Pricking his own finger, a drop of blood comes out, and Gao Peng uses this to touch Silly's head. His consciousness is transported into Silly's mental space. Silly's consciousness still looks as weak as ever. However, this time it makes a conscious effort to float towards Gao Peng, quite unlike its previously timid nature. Seems like all that time and all the meals had not gone to waste. He brings up the contract and asks Silly to become his partner, saying that he will let it obtain such power that he will never have to fear anything anymore. Silly stammers out that he does not want power, but fruit juice. Gao Peng has a hard time processing what he was hearing, but awkwardly agrees that he will give it lots and lots of fruit juice. Thus, the overjoyed consciousness of Silly agrees and the contract is finally established. The next morning, in the bedroom of Granny Chen, the one who lives right below Gao Peng, she is fast asleep. Suddenly, she hears the voice of her husband calling her for breakfast. She is surprised because he was supposed to have passed away long back. However, soon after she realizes that it was just her parrot familiar. After the old man had passed away, it was all thanks to this birdie that she could hold on. After she had lost her daughter, she became a lot less alert and suffered mentally. It had been tough for her old husband too, but he still tended to her and prepared her meals, especially breakfast. Unfortunately, just when her mental health was starting to improve, he passed away. At that time, she had not known why she should live anymore. It was only due to the parrot's voice imitation that she found strength to carry on. She smiles bittersweetly as she thanks it for keeping her company all this time. But her husband must have been waiting for her long enough. It was time for her to go and find him. As she is having these thoughts, an ethereal image of her husband appears sitting by her bedside. Tears swell up in her eyes as she sees him extending his hands to her, promising never to be separated again. As she sees herself taking his hand, silence falls over the room. Granny Chen was no more. Back in Gao Peng's room, he is sleeping soundly when he hears Dazi making weird noises and shouting painfully over and over again. Gao Peng gets up concerned about what is going on, and wonders if something went wrong with the evolution itself. That is when he notices that Dazi has just grown a new set of teeth, and is surprised to find that a centipede can even grow new teeth in the first place. The system prompt informs him that Dazi is already a perfect grade, but he is in the stage of growing new teeth. Gao Peng realizes that the centipede's DNA might have changed after its evolution. He realizes that its current form cannot be judged using common sense anymore. He pats Dazi on the head, telling him not to be scared, and that it is a pain that he must experience. Unable to go to sleep anymore, he calls over Silly and wonders which support path he should choose for it. He could go with either support or lethality. If he uses wood space hearts as the main ingredient, it would evolve into a wood spirit jellyfish that is dual attributed with both healing and spatial abilities. However, if a space-type monster could grow and mature, then it would be able to develop terrifying lethal abilities too. Giving up on the offensive path for the support path is a bit displeasing to him. But if he chooses the offensive path, then he would need to spend a lot of energy and money. It would just be quicker if he chooses the support path. After much contemplation, he finally decides to go with the support path and evolve Silly into a wood spirit jellyfish. After he becomes stronger, he will be able to raise any type of familiar, but having one that suits his current needs is much more important. He walks out of his flat only to see a crowd outside, and he wonders just what the commotion is all about. The people in the crowd are muttering that Granny Chen's late husband must have come to fetch her, and are looking at the sky in wonder. Up above in the sky, Gao Peng spots the cause of the commotion, a flying creature that is named the Guardian of the Soul and is a level 25 of the perfect grade having a soul-type attribute. Of course, the others neither know this nor understand, but Gao Peng does. He wonders if Granny Chen has passed away. That is when he remembers that she had a striped gray plate spider. Without the control of their masters, some familiars choose to enter the mountains and return to the wild, but some others will experience a huge change in their nature and become very aggressive and attack other humans. He makes up his mind that he must not let such a thing happen no matter what. Rushing up the stairs to her apartment, he realizes the door is locked and there is no movement inside. He wonders where the spider could be hiding, only to remember his previous risky encounter with it. Turning around, he spots it hiding in a dark corner of the ceiling. Seeing the spider, Gao Peng does not hesitate and immediately makes a mental call for Dazi to come to him. Dazi arrives in a flash, coiling around Gao Peng protectively as he lets off an intimidating aura. The tiger flinches in fear and falls down. It does not understand why, but memories of the old lady who used to take care of it come to his mind. She had told him that she would be dying of old age soon, so she simply could not form a contract with him. She was sorry she could not name him, but knew that if she did, he would not be able to meet a new master. Gao Peng at the moment has walked up to the spider and is now patting its head like a little pet, saying that it must have been really scared all this while. The warmth of his hands reminds the spider of Granny Chen, and that is when Gao Peng asks him if he wants to come with him. Soon, Gao Peng is out in the streets, walking to his workplace, proud and happy about his newly gained pet monster. The bastard is smiling like a Buddha the entire way. A stark contrast to his happy face are the two creatures on either side of him, Dazi the centipede and the spider he just got. People looking at him almost thought it might be the head of the five poison sect from Muram novels. The reason for Gao Peng's happiness is that he will be able to evolve the spider into a tank, and a tank is exactly what he had been lacking at the moment. Although it seemed ridiculous to use a spider as a meat shield, there actually was an evolutionary pathway for the striped gray plate spider to be a tank. The ingredients were not too hard to find either. After he establishes the blood contract and strengthens it, he will be able to receive plenty of soul power very soon. With the soul power provided by all three, he will also be able to establish a blood contract with Dumby in no time. He is almost at tears as he curses himself for promoting Dumby's grade so early, as it would be harder to collect the soul power needed to promote it. As he is at the door of the Fei Peng familiar studio, he is greeted by Quan Quan as Little Boss. He is surprised that she called him Little Boss because she usually just calls him Master Gao. She has twinkling eyes as she says that it has been quite a while. A long while. A lot of people had been inquiring about Gao Peng when he had left, but there were also customers who specifically wanted to see him despite telling them to wait since he was not free. Yet she was unable to get in touch with him at all throughout the week. He feels anxious as he tells her that they should talk things out slowly and gives her a list of ingredients to prepare that she snatches out of his hands. She walks off pouting as Gao Peng sighs at his luck. In his laboratory, he tells the spider not to be sad and to partner up with Gao Peng since he can give it a loving home. After the spider agrees, he starts preparing the evolution solution. After a lot of careful preparation, the solution is ready. He tells it that the body color of the spider is gray and it is a striped gray plate spider. After evolving, he will become a gray armored spider. He decides that since Silly and Dumby both have a name ending with the letter Y, he will name the spider Stripey, and so he bathes the spider in the solution. As the transformation occurs, Gao Peng is struck by the sharp pain of soul transfer, but he understands that it is only a fraction of the pain that Stripey is experiencing at the moment. He tries to muster a smile and encourages it to become stronger, saying that one can only rely on themselves to overcome the pain of becoming stronger. Just then, Quan Quan comes in calling for him. She informs him that a customer was here, and it was one that looked quite rich. He smiles and says he will be there soon. Since he has one extra mouth to feed, he should naturally go and earn more money. However, he is surprised when he finally comes out. The familiar of the rich person sitting on the sofa appeared to be of the commander tier. He tells Quan Quan to stay near Stripey and watch over his evolution while he discusses things with the customers. He also tells her to pour the contents of a specific test tube into the container the moment the liquid inside turns into a lighter color. With that taken care of, he goes ahead and greets the customer who shakes his hand firmly with a smile. He says that he had long heard of his Gao Peng's fame, and it was a pleasure to finally be able to meet him in the flesh. He introduces himself as Lu Xie, currently a freelancer. He used to own a small herb garden previously, but it had been sadly destroyed by gray devil spiders. His garden was now still under repair. Gao Peng exclaims, asking if it is the City East's herb garden, and the person is surprised to find that Gao Peng would know of his little garden and feels honored. Gao Peng wondered just what he had done for the person to be praising him so much. He does not think he is that well known, and is confused as to the zealous show of respect. Noticing his confusion, Lucia realizes that Gao Peng might not be aware of it himself, and explains that Lucia had recently been invited to the military's celebration banquet a while back. During the banquet, Directo Chen himself said that Gao Peng had been the key contributor to the magma fire toad's research process. This had in turn led to Gao Peng's fame increasing quite a bit. Lucy decides to hold off on the small talk and gets back on topic. He has a familiar he needs to strengthen, and believes that Gao Peng would be the most capable and trustworthy to entrust his pet's evolution to. As he signals a servant to raise the red cloth draped over a cage he had brought, an interesting sight is revealed. Gao Peng is amazed to find that the familiar that needs to be evolved is the ebony nighthound. According to what is known, all dog-type monsters have the possibility of evolving into an ebony nighthound. It is a possible alternate evolutionary path for dog-type monsters. The species has jet-black fury that perfectly blends in with the darkness of the night and is also capable of absorbing most wavelengths of light, making it the perfect assassin under the cover of the night. This property is also what makes it the most ideal watchdog. Thus, many manor and garden owners choose this as their familiar. Lucy states that he is aware of the way Gao Peng charges their customers, and that he can decide and determine the price of evolving commander-tier pets himself. Lucy does not mind and tells him to do as he wishes. Gao Peng finds that on eliminating the 2 rarest and strongest paths for its evolution, and after eliminating 5 more paths that require materials that are too rare or have procedures that are too complex, he is still left with 13 possible paths. Gao Peng informs him that promoting the grade should be no problem at all, and he even has quite the few evolutionary paths for Lucy to choose from. The strength of the familiar would differ from path to path, and Lucy understands this, so he tells him that he will have the most expensive one. Gao Peng then says that it will then cost him 5,000 alliance credits. Lucy is taken aback by the price, but Gao Peng clasps his hands smiling like Buddha while he praises his decision-making skills. Suddenly he hears a loud noise coming from the laboratory. He rushes in and finds Quan shaking in fright. Stripey has successfully evolved into a gray armored spider, but he has broken the glass in which it had been kept. He scolds Stripey for doing so and tells it not to do such things, even going so far as to scare Quan. He tells it that no matter how strong it becomes in the future, it should learn how to control its strength and pats its head. Stripey feels embarrassed but happy at being given the attention. However, just then he stubs his toe on a piece of wood on the floor and starts writhing in pain. Gao Peng is exasperated and wonders why all the familiars under him seemed rather silly. He wonders if this was an example of the famous saying that said a man is known by the company he keeps. Shaking such thoughts out of his head, he looks at Stripey and tells it to go to his office first and stay quiet without touching anything. Stripey accepts the order, but crawls off in a strange manner almost akin to a crab. He helps Quan up as he apologizes to her. Asking her to order a new container for him, he tells her to put the fee on his tab and make sure that the new one is larger than the previous one. He also tells her to prepare the materials needed for the ebony hound's evolution, and that he has already made an appointment with the customer to start the experiment next week. Finally, he talks of having someone over to clean the laboratory and tells her to put that on his tab too. Since his apparatus is broken, he will not be able to continue work anymore, so he decides to head back home. Quan is depressed at the fact that they have to spend money again while Gao Peng leaves. While walking home, he thinks about how his house is starting to get more and more crowded, and it will be time for him to move to a house with much more space. It would be best if it is on the outskirts of the city because it will be more convenient for him to leave town for training or gathering medicine. Thus, he decides to contact a middleman for real estate when he finds time. Looking at Stripey walking like a crab again, he wonders if he did the evolution incorrectly. Kicking it gently, he tells it to walk properly and reminds it that it's a spider and not a crab. Seeing people staring at the confused spider, he lets out an exhausted sigh. A few days have passed and Gao Peng has just arrived at the real estate agency named I Love Houses. He is greeted by the salesperson he had talked with over call recently and asks if they can take a look at the house immediately. She speaks courteously and tells him that they can indeed see the house right away and they have even prepared transportation. According to his requirements, she says that they have been able to find a large villa on the outskirts of the city, which comes with a garden, a basement, and has clean surroundings, and tells him to have a look as she hands him an iPad. Seeing photos of the villa, he is quite pleased with the way the house is designed and how it looks. She even tells him that the villa has no basement, but since the surrounding areas belong to the same property, it will be possible for him to build his own basement. However, Gao Peng feels a bit suspicious and asks what area it is located in. She coughs and tells him that it is near the prosperous Dragon Lake area where the price is very cheap, only amounting to 2,000 alliance credits. She tells him that since it is on the outskirts, there is very little supervision of the area and a large portion of the surrounding land is included too, so it is especially suitable for Gao Peng's requirements. He finds faults in such a good deal and says that he has a few questions. Firstly, he asks whether the picture of plants in the area was taken before the cataclysm since they did not look mutated. The salesperson starts sweating and stammers that they would not dare. She explains that an isolated villa from before the cataclysm that comes with a few dozen acres of land is practically impossible to find within Chang'an City in the current day and age. And it is only 2,000 alliance credits too, so it's really cheap despite the secluded location. She also adds that there is an expressway right at the foot of the hill, so if he buys a car, it will be really convenient for him to get around. However, the more Gao Peng thinks about it, the more he smells deception. It sounds to him like there are a bunch of hidden problems and safety concerns along with renovation issues. According to the picture, the villa should cost at least 3,000 to 4,000 alliance credits. The fact that there was plenty of unrest during the early stages after the cataclysm meant that a villa like that would have either been fortified into a fortress or deserted and left in ruins. Honestly, Gao Peng did not expect too much either. and even if the villa looked at least 60% of what it looked like in the picture, then he would be satisfied. Further, regarding the matter of safety, there would be no problem as Gao Peng was no ordinary person. He already had plenty of familiars he was raising at home. Any monsters who dared approach it would just become additional meals for his familiars. Thinking of all this, he smiles evilly at all the advantages he was able to get. The saleslady is confused on seeing him smile but starts speaking again. She says that the property is going for a rather low price, and the seller himself is making a loss from this deal. He says that he will go take a look then. When they are outside and walking to the transport, she notices Stripey and pets it, calling it quite the cute crab. Gao Peng sighed over the fact that his pet was still being mistaken for a crab. He tells her it is a spider as she stutters out an apology. Just then, Gao Peng feels the presence of someone else watching him. He turns around but cannot see anyone. When the lady asks what happened, he decides to ignore it, and they proceed ahead to have a look at the villa. Little does Gao Peng know that he is being stalked by a person who has a camera in hand. Soon they arrive at the villa, and Gao Peng notices that it looks similar to the one in the pictures, but the exterior walls are very worn down, and there are a lot of creepers and crawlers growing on the building. After they head inside, he notices that there is not much dust inside the house, and wonders if the seller maintains the place frequently. The entire place is also fully prepped with furniture, and the only thing is that they are old models, and the chairs, tables, and floorboard all need some repair. Despite all that, the furniture inside the villa itself costs a fortune. Even if the location is not good, it is impossible to sell it for only 2,000, and he thinks the entire deal is a bit weird. Just then, a man enters through the open door of the villa and asks if he is Gao Peng. Hearing this, he turns around, wondering just who it could be. The salesperson introduces the man as Mr. Liu, the one who is selling the villa. Mr. Liu says that he had heard Gao Peng was coming to take a look at the house, and he had decided to hurry over for that. Seeing that he had rushed over just because of him, Gao Peng asks if they knew each other. The man smiles and tells him not to joke. After all, there was no one in the industry who had not heard of his name. He was the ace-up director Feng Sleeves and the hero behind last time's military action. He shows his business card to Gao Peng and tells him that he is also selling familiars now, and if Gao Peng ever needed any familiars or had intentions of collaborating, then he can give him a 20% discount. Gao Peng is impressed by how well Mr. Liu was promoting his business. Suddenly, Liu asks if the villa has been to his liking. He says that he hires someone to clean up the place every season, and if he wants to buy it, then he will only need to pay a small maintenance fee, and then he can move in straight away. Gao Peng says that it is honestly a very good deal, but he finds one problem in this whole situation. Although the location is not good, the villa itself is at least 4,000 alliance credits. 2,000 alliance credits are way too low and below the market price, so he is confused as to why Liu was selling it for so cheap. He tells Gao Peng that the villa had actually been bought by him for his parents to enjoy retirement. He makes a sad face as he recounts the past. He says that his parents were villagers who were not used to city life, so he had bought a villa on the outskirts for them. They had worked themselves to the bone their entire lives for his sake, and as a son, after achieving some success in life, he had naturally wanted them to enjoy the rest of their lives. However, the waves of monsters had ruined everything. His parents had not made it in time to enjoy anything, not even for a day. They had slaved away their entire lives. He ends up punching the table in frustration as he gets angry at the cruel world and the events following the cataclysm. After calming himself down for a bit, he tells Gao Peng that he had originally wanted to keep this villa as a memory, but he heard that Gao Peng had been looking for a house with similar requirements, so he asked the agency to recommend it to him at 2,000 credits. He tells Gao Peng to just see the cheap price of the villa as an investment in him. After all, Liu was not young anymore, and his ability was limited. H did not have the chance to do everything he wanted to, and he knew that young people like Gao Peng would be the pillars for the future of the city. With a sigh, he hopes that such an incident is not repeated again. Hearing the sad tale, Gao Peng is reminded of his own parents who had passed away in the cataclysm and feels sympathetic for Mr. Liu. Making up his mind, he thanks him for his trust and decides to buy the villa. As he comes back home, he finds that Dumby and Silly are just munching on their favorite snacks and do not even greet him, these gluttons. He smiles and tells them to come over as he has brought nourishment, especially for them. He adds that they taste much better than orange juice, yin, cedar needles, or all that stuff. Hearing that, everyone immediately rushes to the table where Gao Peng has laid out the food. Seeing them salivating, he tells them to dig in with a smile. Just then, Sister Tang arrives at his doorstep exclaiming that his house sure seemed lovely. Gao Peng is delighted to see her as she enters and looks around. Seeing Dazi has leveled up, she bends down to pat his head only to notice that he has started growing teeth too. With an enthusiastic smile, She tells it to come closer as she checks to see if there are any teeth that grew in the wrong direction. Seeing it in such a tough spot asking for help, Gao Peng just turns away and tells Dazi to bear with it for a while. Sister Tang then turns around and says that she has heard he bought a villa recently. He is surprised news had traveled so fast and says that the villa needs some renovating, so he will not be moving in immediately. She tells him to make sure to invite her over. With passionate twinkling eyes, she says that he does not have enough experience, so he should be sure to not get fooled. Settling that matter, she decides to head out and leave the house, leaving Gao Peng wondering if the villa was cheap due to other reasons too. Meanwhile, sneaky Sister Tang is planning to buy a villa right next door to Gao Peng's. Of course, it will be completely natural and just a coincidence, and no one would be the wiser. Gao Peng is currently on the outskirts of the border of the outfield training camp. It has been a while, and the second training camp is currently underway. It would be best if he can gather all the materials that day, but he only has 3 days of vacation, and that day would be the last day. In case he is not able to gather all the wood space heart that he needs, he will have to wait until next Monday before he has time to go out again. That would delay things too much. Suddenly he senses danger and turns around swiftly to find an elite tier monster, a black creature named the Gray Sand Bobcat, sitting on the branch of a tree. He is amazed that the very first monster he encounters in the periphery of the forest is already an elite tier monster. It was surely a dangerous place. The bobcat immediately moves and is extremely fast as he approaches Gao Peng in a zigzag motion, zipping through the trees. Right before he is about to harm Gao Peng, Dazi gets in the way, but surprisingly, Dumby grabs and throws him away without much effort. However, the momentary delay is enough for Dumby to interfere and send a punch towards the bobcat, who cautiously steps back in order to dodge it. Dumby decides to be the one to fight it and rushes towards it extremely fast. Seeing it approaching, the bobcat is utterly frightened at the large figure and tries to make a run for it. However, Dumby uses a skill to bind the bobcat with blood-red threads, preventing it from escaping. It smashes the bobcat through the ground with a single punch, mercilessly killing it. As Gao Peng observes the battle, he realizes that the strength that Dumby now possesses has increased more than tenfold since its skull ghoul ape days. Although Gao Peng had known all along that Dumby would grow up to be utterly strong, he had never thought it would be this strong. However, seeing Dumby in confusion as to how he had ended it so easily, Gao Peng realizes that it is still not used to its own strength. Well, it is not Dumby's fault anyway. Ever since Dumby had evolved, he had not really let Dumby fight in any battles or trained him practically. He decides to let him have his fill of fighting soon, and they depart again. Dumby had never understood what Gao Peng had talked about that day when they met while he was still locked in the cage, abandoned after multiple experiments. However, he knew now that this boy would always take care of him, and he would never be alone again. Gao Peng was everything for Dumby. As Dumby ponders over such things, Dazi is complaining to Gao Peng about how he had been thrown. Gao Peng tries to calm him by saying that Dumby had only pushed him aside because it was in a hurry. Dazi's pout continues as they bicker along the way. After searching for 3 full hours and going through several areas well suited for the growth of bottle trees, they had finally found them. The last time he had seen a green tree snake was also in a bottle tree forest, so he wonders if these types of snakes have a preference for bottle trees. Dummy notices the green tree snake camouflaging itself as a hanging vine and immediately grabs it. After ripping its head off like a toy, it takes out the core crystal inside it, offering it to Gao Peng. While he is not really in need of the green tree snake core crystals, he knows that it is Dumby's token of appreciation and its own way of showing love, so he cannot refuse it. Thereafter, Gao Peng asks Dumby to break the bottle tree in the middle, which it accomplishes effortlessly with a single punch. Gao Peng is stoked by how easy this was becoming and tells Dumby to continue breaking more trees. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, 3 people are headed towards him using some information given by a mysterious identity. Suddenly, the orange-colored mouse named Tutu that rests on their captain's shoulder picks up something through his ear. One of the 2 people following the captain asks if Tutu has noticed anything. The captain says there is a loud noise coming from a direction, and although he does not know if it is the kid or not, it is worth a check. The sounds are loud, heavy thuds, and one of them exclaims that it sounds similar to the boxing practice he used to do in the past. His friend laughs and says that he must have gone silly from all his boxing. There was no way someone could be practicing boxing in the middle of the jungle. The captain tells them not to let their guard down as they cannot ignore any possible clues. They had finally got a high-paying mission, and they cannot afford to fail it. He reminds one of them that their sister was also waiting for her tuition fees so she can go to school. With resolute faces, they decide to move quickly to have a look. Hiding behind a tree, they notice Dumby breaking a tree with a single punch like it is paper. The 2 people are scared as hell, and the captain tells them to look in another direction. Gao Peng, their target kid, is now collecting something from within the tree's broken trunk. The 2 of them behind the captain say that the people had paid them to just scout out that kid's familiar. Just having a look like this would be enough because going any closer would just get them caught. It is clear that Dumby is not just any ordinary familiar, and the large centipede beside it is not something to be trifled with either. Both of them think they should just leave. However, the captain tells them to quiet down. All this time they had been occasionally getting lucky and picking up dead bodies to get by. He had had enough with such days of boring and low-leveled work. With their skill set, they cannot even enter the deeper parts of the Dark Ember Forest because it is too dangerous inside and filled with unknown terrors. Now that they had been given this opportunity, they should at least give it a try. There was definitely something unusual about Gao Peng. He wonders why a monster trainer is creating such a big ruckus in the forest. Surely it is not simply to measure the width of the tree trunks. If only they knew what kind of valuables were hidden inside the tree, they would hit the jackpot. After all, the forest had an abundance of trees. He then orders Deng Sen to hide in the shadows and use his familiar to control that guy while Yao Huan and he take care of the big one. He says that they can just test him out first. Hopefully, this would be the day when their fortune shines and they will never have to work hard again. Suddenly, Dazi and Dumby pause their activities and look in a direction, prompting Gao Peng to turn around and see just what they had found. He realizes that there was someone hiding behind the trees and shouts at them to show themselves. The captain, who had been making the dreamy plans of his future, realizes that they had been noticed and starts getting nervous. The captain comes out smiling at Gao Peng as he greets him. He says it is fate they were meeting like this, and lies that they were just here thinking if he needs any help with what he was doing. Gao Peng does not fall for such tricks and notices the familiars behind the person. They are the armor-piercing cone bee and the skull butterfly, who are both familiars that are good at ambushing an enemy in the forest. He knows that the two people must definitely not have any good intentions. Suddenly, Dumby's attention is drawn to a third person hiding behind another forest, and the captain immediately tries to lie again, saying that it is just his brother who has no ill intentions. The captain wonders just what kind of crazy monster Gao Peng has been raising that was so perceptive as to even find out his comrade who is skilled in hiding his presence. The third person who just walks out stutters and says that he just had to use the bathroom so he arrived now. The familiar that follows him is a mithril cockroach that is quite the surprise to Gao Peng. The mithril cockroach was an excellent grade monster at level 18. It had the gold attribute and its weakness was electricity. It was a rare variant but not something Dazi could not counter. There was nothing to be afraid of. He looks coldly at them and says he does not need any help if the help they were about to offer was of such kind. The captain smiles and says that since he does not like them impeding, then they will just leave. The one behind him is surprised that their captain had given in this early and asks if they are really leaving. The captain tells him that with their exposure one after another, their element of surprise is already long gone. If they fail, then they will just be making a new enemy for nothing. Further, to be able to raise 3 familiars at the same time at such a young age means that he either has the money or the skills to back it, and either way, they cannot afford to mess with him. To make things worse, Tutu, his pet mouse, was actually feeling extremely uncomfortable and scared due to the dark aura that the black-robed familiar was giving off. Its intuition had saved the captain's lives many times, so he knew that it would be the right choice to take in this situation. He tells them that they should head back. In this world where it was the survival of the fittest, they might encounter quite the dangerous familiars from time to time. They will go back once Gao Peng leaves to see if they can find anything there later. Since there are so many trees in the jungle anyway, why fight him over just a few trees? His subordinate understands and they all return. Gao Peng is left wondering how if Dumby had not spotted the person hiding behind the dark, these 3 could have attacked them head-on too. If they had attacked, he was not sure if he would be able to fight with the intention to kill. Nevertheless, he puts that topic aside and continues cutting down trees. After 2 hours, he has successfully collected 950 grams of the material and tells Dazi to come over. Using the sparking horns of the centipede, he takes a wooden torch and sets it on fire. He throws the flaming torch on leaves to set fire to the wood and the trunks in the area. Before the cataclysm, starting a fire in a forest was a chargeable offense, but the law had been removed after the cataclysm occurred. The life force and the resistance possessed by the plants had become more resilient than initially imagined. For a simple flame to create a huge forest fire is practically impossible. Obviously, this was just a convenient way for him to get rid of the evidence of his work. While he has set fire to the place, the smoke rises into the distance and soon catches the eyes of the 3 people who had earlier thought of ambushing him. The captain remarks that the kid is extremely vigilant and wonders if Gao Peng himself has not realized the decisive ruthlessness that is embedded in his nature. His subordinate asks if they are just going to leave this matter alone, and the captain nods his head in affirmation. There was no fundamental conflict between them and the kid. If he was holding on to some obvious treasure, then things might have been different, and he would have chosen to take the risk and eliminate all the traces. In simpler terms, the possible benefits of going after him would just not be big enough, so they cannot afford to do that. While it is true, it is no longer of any use for them, there definitely was someone else who would love the information. He makes a call and tells the person on the other side to relay to Dr. Jiang that the mission had been completed. The pictures of the target's familiars had been sent already. The person on the other side thanks them for their cooperation and informs them that their remuneration had already been sent. The person turns around after cutting the call as he addresses Dr. Jiang, who is sitting on a comfortable chair. The person thinks the bandits had not even made a move and considers the scouting mission a failure. But Dr. Jiang says that it is fine as they have already finished preparing the next step of their plan. With an evil smile, he remarks that he has finally found Ji Hanwoo's grandson, the only relative Ji Hanwoo had. As Gao Peng is back home, he notices that Stripey's growth rate is quite fast, because not only has it leveled up, but its body has also grown almost 2 sizes bigger since they left the house. However, seeing the cans of food and the plastic wrappers lying around on the floor, he realizes the spider had been eating way too much in a single sitting. The spider had shed its skin too, and Gao Peng picks up a piece of it. Seeing the broken skin, he knows he must have been mistaken in thinking that the shed skins of familiars could have magical effects like in novels. With a sigh, he looks at the spider who is now smiling at him. With a smile that equals the spider's, he tells it to keep eating up and become nice and chubby, and the spider replies enthusiastically and passionately that he will keep it up. Suddenly, Gao Peng's smile turns evil as he declares that once the spider is fat enough, he will make fried spider meat out of it. Hearing this, the spider trembles in fright and keeps the cans of food away. It starts getting teary eyes as it huddles back in an apologetic manner. Gao Peng sighs and tells it that he was only asking it to eat less for its own good. If he kept eating so much of canned food, then his body will start gathering toxins. Ignoring that issue, he turns around and thinks of how he has collected wood space hearts and the items required for Silly's evolution have all been gathered. However, they cannot be stewed into a large pot of food this time. Silly has a weak constitution and cannot take any stress, so the materials need special preparation. This essentially means that he cannot do it at his own home and has to go to a laboratory. Walking out of his house, he heads over to the Fei Peng familiar studio where he works and opens up the laboratory at night. Quan Quan seemed to have went back early that day, so it meant no one would disturb him. The ingredients this time were quite rare. According to the formula, they have to be specially processed by refrigeration, high-temperature burning, and also corrosion using strong acids. After a lot of work, the formula is finally done, and judging by the sweet fragrance it has, he is sure that Silly will definitely like it. He mixes the solution in a large container filled with water, and the sweet smell drifts through the entire lab. Silly almost thinks from the smell that the solution that Gao Peng has prepared is actually juice. This time, when Gao Peng tells it to get into the evolution solution, the familiar's reaction is completely different from the others who would always hesitate or be afraid. For Silly, who loves juice, diving into this sweet-smelling, fragrant water was nothing short of a blessing, and Silly had jumped right in before Gao Peng could even finish speaking. As it leisurely swims in the solution, Gao Peng is getting concerned. Silly was changing color. And the worst part was that it was green, and Gao Peng simply hates green. He suddenly starts regretting choosing the wood spirit jellyfish evolution path for Silly. However, it is already done, and there is nothing more to say. To make matters worse, it is fluorescent green. The materials needed for the evolution to the epic grade were way too rare. So he had decided to go with the magical space sand, and the highest grade Silly can reach now is the perfect grade at the moment. With Silly's evolution, his soul strength had increased considerably. He might still be far away from being able to make a contract with Dumby, but as long as he puts in the effort, it will only take a couple of days. Just then he feels predatory yays from Silly, but he is too late as Silly jumps out of the bath and immediately rushes for Gao Peng's head. The cute little jellyfish simply cannot go for any other spot than Gao Peng's head as its seat. After struggling for a while and losing the battle in the end, Gao Peng just gives up, and Silly happily sits atop his head without a care. Just as he is about to leave the lab, he receives a call. It is apparently from the construction company that Sister Tang had introduced him to a few days ago. The details of the workflow had already been finalized, so he was unsure as to why they were calling at such a late hour. He picks up and the person on call, Manager Lee, greets him before asking if he has a minute free. He informs Gao Peng that they have encountered some problems while cleaning the villa and need him to personally come and take a look. He asks what the problem is, and they tell him that they had found some variant plants inside the villa that impeded their development work. If they do not get rid of them, then it will be impossible to continue with the repair. However, if they remove the plants, they would need to remove parts of the building too, which is why they hope he can come over and take a look. When Gao Peng agrees, Manager Lee immediately says that all the workers are waiting for him on site, so he would appreciate it if he hurries. Gao Peng is perturbed by this information. He asks why he was having such an honor that so many masters were working overtime for him without any extra pay. The manager speaks in an anxious voice and says it is just a matter within their own organization, so he should not pay it any mind and just hurry. Gao Peng realizes that something is up, but just replies that he will be there later and cuts the call. Little does he know that Dr. Jian is on site, and Manager Lee had been ordered to say those things to him at gunpoint. It is all a trap to lure Gao Peng there. However, Gao Peng is no fool either. He knows that something suspicious is going on and finds that he cannot even reach Sister Tan through a call. Just as a precaution, he decides to bring Dumby and Dazi over with him too. Telling Silly to hurry, he runs back to his home immediately. Just who is Dr. Zhang to be ruthlessly pursuing Gao Peng? Will Gao Peng really be able to escape unscathed from the ambush? Only time will tell.